Chapter 661. The only thing you did wrong? Listen, it was so difficult for you to shoulder the blame, yet you still act so righteously. Ji Hongwen coldly laughed. As expected, even at such an old age, you still want to protect your damn face. In front of your child, you can't even put down your pride to admit your mistake. Qing Lin's life has already been ruined by you. She has already left for so many years. Don't you feel the slightest bit of guilt in your heart? To this day, do you still think that it was her fault that she left while pregnant? Xiao Zhenjuan closed his eyes and was silent for a long time before saying, "She has already left for so many years. Regardless of whether it was my fault or not, what I want to do now is to make it up to my daughter. If Qing Lin still holds a grudge against me for what I did back then, when we meet in the netherworld 100 years later, I will apologize to her. But this is not a reason for you, Ji Hongwen, to hide my daughter for so many years. You even gave your own daughter so many chances to frame her." Ji Mengran, who had been sitting on the carpet for a long time, seemed to be the forgotten one. Suddenly being mentioned, she stiffened and looked at Ji Hongwen with reddened eyes. "Dad, I didn't." Ji Hongwen closed his eyes. "I admit to this point. It was my fault for not raising my daughter properly. That's why Mengran could even do such a despicable thing." Ji Mengran cried out, "Dad? Even at a time like this, you're still speaking up for an outsider. Others are already planning to take Jinwan away. In the future, Jinwan will no longer be your daughter. If even I am taken away by the police, do you want to spend the rest of your life alone?" Ji Hongwen closed his eyes. "Spending the rest of my life alone is much better than having a heartless and unscrupulous person by my side who framed her own sister for the sake of the family fortune." "Hey!" Ji Mengran suddenly laughed with reddened eyes. "If Jinwan is really the Xiao family's daughter, do you think she would still be interested in the Ji Corporation's things?" Jinwan's hand on Ji Hongwen's arm did not leave. She coldly said, "Don't use your brainless mind to guess at me. Dad is currently in his 50s. If it weren't for you causing him to act up, he would still be in the prime of his life. At the very least, the G Corporation would still be in his hands for another 30 to 40 years. Why are you in such a hurry to get the family fortune? Do you really want Dad to step down as soon as possible?" In Xiao Zhenjuan's hands, Ling Xiao Group was like the sun at high noon. Since they were classmates when they were studying in America, they were the same age. For a moment, Jinwan felt indignant. Why did Xiao Zhenjuan's body appear to be as healthy as a young man's, while Ji Hongwen was inferior to him? She had to arrange for 2 top-notch medical staff to be by Ji Hongwen's side to watch him exercise every day. She wouldn't stop until he was exceptionally healthy and strong within 2 years. Ji Mengran yelled, "I didn't say, now, because the last time I went back to the Ji family, Dad kept saying that he wouldn't leave a single cent to me in the future. I never said that I would make him give up his position now. Jinwan, you're an outsider in the Ji family. Stop trying to sow discord here." Xiao Zhenjuan coldly narrowed his eyes at the reckless Ji Mengran before turning to look at Jinwan. "Outsider? Nguanwan, come back with me. As long as the Xiao family is here, you'll never be an outsider." Jinwan didn't hesitate at all. She helped Ji Hongwen back to the sofa and sat down. At the same time, she stood up from the sofa. Without looking back at Xiao Zhenjuan, she said coldly, "Mr. Xiao must have come to the Ji family because you heard about what happened to me recently and rushed over to do something for me. I'm very grateful for Mr. Zhao's willingness to help me, but I'm sorry, I'm not related to the Xiao family at all. I have other ways to solve my problem. There's no need for you to trouble yourself. Besides, Mr. Xiao, you should be able to tell that the Ji family doesn't welcome you. You may leave." Hearing Jinwan's words, Ji Hongwen suddenly looked up at her. Xiao Zhenjuan wasn't surprised, but he obviously didn't expect that Ji Hongwen's biological daughter would still cling to the Ji family even though she was so against her. Xiao Zhenjuan said seriously, "In fact, you've already guessed it. Since I met you twice, with your sharp wit, you must have guessed the relationship between you and the Xiao family many times, but you always avoided it. I can respect your choice. After all, we haven't seen each other for more than 20 years, and you don't have any father-daughter relationship with me. I understand that, but now the Ji family is like an abyss. You won't get any benefits even if you stay. You'd better come back with me. After all, we're related by blood, and the relationship between father and daughter can be cultivated slowly. Believe me, as long as the Xiao family is here, no one dares to stand on your head and make trouble. As long as I'm alive, I'll definitely spoil you like a princess. You'll be the apple of my Xiao family's eye. There's no such thing as an abyss. I grew up here, and this is my home. The person sitting on the sofa is my father, Ji Nuan said flatly. If Mr. Xiao had been standing outside for a long time, you should have heard Ji Mingran's complaint just now. She accused my father of favoring me since I was a child, so I've never been wronged here. As for the princess, I'm already in my 20s. How can I dream of being a princess? The Ji family used to be one of the 4 big families in High City, and I don't think it's any worse than the Xiao family. Mr. Xiao, you don't have to be so arrogant and condescending. Every inch under my feet carries my childhood memories and the warm and happy memories of my mother in the last few years of her life. This is my root. Xiao Zhenjuan looked at her and slowly frowned. Nuan. Ji Nuan finally turned to look at him. Please call me Miss Ji. My relationship with Mr. Xiao isn't close enough for you to address me like this. Xiao Zhenjuan's hand, which was about to reach out to her, froze in midair. After a long while, he slowly lowered his hand. He turned back to look at the door behind him and changed the topic. The police have been waiting outside for a long time. Ji Hongwen, are you still not going to throw your daughter out for committing a crime? Ji Mengran rushed to crawl to Ji Hongwen's leg. Dad, please. Before her hand could touch Ji Hongwen's leg, Xiao Zhenjuan's expression turned cold. 2 bodyguards suddenly entered the door. They stepped forward and lifted Ji Mengran up without any hesitation. Chapter 662. Ji Mingran's cries grew further and further until the police car door slammed shut with a ting, finally cutting off her cries. Nuan, are you sure you don't want to return to the Xiao family with me? Xiao Zhenjuan turned to look at Ji Nuan after it finally quietened down. Ji Nuan glanced at the door. Mr. Xiao brought bodyguards here today. Is it to kidnap Ji Mengran or to forcefully take me away from the Ji family? Xiao Zhenjuan's expression faltered. Ji Hongwen immediately snorted coldly. He has been despotic for too long. Back then he used forceful methods to bring your mother back home. Now that he has decided to acknowledge you as his daughter, of course he will use the same methods to take you away. Xiao Zhenjuan's gaze faltered. He softly said, the bodyguards won't touch you. It's up to you whether you want to return to the Xiao family with me or not. But I still hope that you can think it through and come back with me. That time when I met you alone, you mentioned your mother. I know that you are sensitive and won't easily compromise. I won't use too forceful methods. Don't worry. Ji Nuan did not speak. Ji Hongwen sneered. That's right. Back then, Qing Lin was alone in America. There was no one to support her. She was forcefully taken away by you, and no one dared to stop her. By the time I found out, everything had already happened. But Ji Nuan is different. The person standing behind her is Mo Jingshan. He is someone that even you, an old thing who has dominated the domestic business world for decades, dare not provoke. Of course, you won't dare to forcefully take her away. Otherwise, even if Mo Jingshan turns the Xiao family upside down, he will definitely find her. Must you stand between me and my daughter and use such a method to sow discord? Xiao Zhenjuan's expression turned ugly. The grudges from decades ago will be settled between the two of us. Nuan is my daughter who was lost for more than 20 years. Even if you are angry for Qing Lin, you shouldn't forcefully take my child. I sow discord? Ji Hongwen sneered. The truth is right before your eyes. Do you still need me to sow discord? Because of Mo Jingshan's existence, you didn't provoke her too much, but you have long wanted to bring her back to the Xiao family. You've been thinking about this for a long time. I've asked her to go back to Ji City and visit Qing Lin's hometown. I think Ji Nuan is very familiar with her mother's hardships and helplessness. At Ji Nuan's age, we can't fool her with just a few words. She has her own feelings and thoughts. Don't think that everyone is your employee or your puppet and can do whatever you want her to do. I don't need this daughter of mine. If she wants to leave, I won't stop her. But if she refuses to leave, she will still be my daughter. Ji Hongwon's eyes widened as he looked at Ji Nwon and Ji Hongwon. You're right, Ji Nwon, Ji Hongwon. You can't fool her with just a few words. She has her own feelings and thoughts. Don't think that everyone is your company's employee or your puppet and she can do whatever you want. Xiao Zhenjuan placed one hand behind his back. Ever since he entered the Ji family's home, he had been standing there with his back straight. Although he didn't do it on purpose, he still exuded the aura and demeanor of a superior. He said coldly, "As long as you can protect her, I don't have to disregard our family's vow to come here early in the morning to take her away." This time, Ji Mingran's various tricks and frame-up against her are extremely vicious. A while ago, I found out something from the old servants of the Ji family who left many years ago. When Nuan Nuan was only a teenager, you married that Shin Haru into the family and allowed her to bring her son, Sheng Yihan, into the Ji family. What was the result? In the end, because of your negligence, she almost made a huge mistake. She was almost raped by that brat, and in the end, she suffered from the cold. Ji Hongwon's expression faltered. He paused and turned to look at Ji Nwon. This was a knot in Ji Hongwon's heart for half of his life. Earlier, because of this matter, he vented his anger on Ji Mengran. He hated her very much. But he had to admit that this was indeed because of his negligence back then. Ji Nwon's cold voice rang at this moment. Mr. Xiao, even if I grew up in the Xiao family, I might not have lived a better life than here. The Xiao family's business is so big, and there are so many people. Mr. Xiao is usually so busy. Can you guarantee that you won't be negligent? The grace of raising someone is greater than the heavens. You're nitpicking at my father's efforts all these years. Aren't you going a little too far? Xiao Zhenjuan watched her figure that kept her face turned sideways. Nuan Nuan, you also said that he raised you. That means he acknowledges that I'm your biological father. Must you speak to me like this? Ji Nwon turned to look at him. I'm the one involved in the decision to raise him. I have the clearest and most obvious understanding of how to choose and how to do it. The right lies in my hands. Mr. Xiao doesn't seem to have the right to morally blackmail me. Xiao Zhenjuan choked. Ji Nwon's stubbornness was really like his. If he could soften a little, he wouldn't have ended up like that with her mother. It was precisely because he knew himself too well that he understood Ji Nwon. At this time, nothing he said or did could change her mind. He could only treat time as a good medicine and let it seep in little by little. Perhaps only then could she face the fact that her surname was Xiao. At this moment, Ji Nwon's cell phone rang. She turned to answer it. She didn't go to the company yesterday on Monday. Today, the company had something to do and she had to rush over. After hanging up the phone, she took a look at the time and turned to tell Ji Hongwon that she had something to do in the company and would find time to go back to the Ji family later. Just as she was about to leave, she walked past Xiao Zhenjuan and stopped. She said coolly, President Xiao, please leave the Ji family. Since you made a vow many years ago to mind your own business, please leave. My father has been in a bad mood recently, and his health isn't good. Don't be an eyesore here. Xiao Zhenjuan's eyelids suddenly twitched. He turned his eyes, but Ji Nwon didn't even look at him and walked out without looking back. At the same time, Los Angeles, USA. In front of the headquarters of Shine Group in Los Angeles, a black off-road vehicle had been parked for a long time. In the car, Nanheng looked indifferently at the helicopter hovering over the roof of Shine Group and picked up the phone to call Mo Jingshan in High City. Chapter 663. After Ji Nwon returned to the company, her phone rang several times, but she was busy with the meeting and didn't answer. When it was dark and it was time to get off work, she returned to the office and discussed the unfinished matters from the meeting with her secretary and other staff. She was busy until 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. Her phone, which she had forgotten to charge, had run out of battery, so she didn't notice who called her in the afternoon. When she was finally done, Xiaoba returned to the assistant's office to work overtime, while Ji Nwon stayed in the CEO's office to review the documents she had left behind yesterday. After reading them, she sat alone in the quiet office, thinking of what happened at the Ji family this morning. She had never thought deeply about her identity, especially when she learned that she might be related to the Xiao family. If Ji Hongwen hadn't specially asked her to return to Ji City and revealed that he wanted to have a showdown with her, she would rather not know anything and just be a good daughter of the Ji family. But today, Mr. Zhao's sudden appearance caught her off guard. Perhaps if Ji Mengran hadn't gone too far and Xiao Zhenjuan couldn't stand it anymore, perhaps he wouldn't have come so hurriedly to reunite with her. But today, when she suddenly learned of her mother's entanglement with those two men, Jin Wan really didn't expect it. On the other hand, what Xiaoba didn't expect was to see Mo Jingshan come to their company in her lifetime. Xiaoba was working overtime in the assistant's office at night. Halfway through, she went out to pour a glass of water, but she suddenly saw Emma. When they were still a studio in High City, several of their colleagues had discussed excitedly in private, wondering when COMO would come in person, which would definitely cause a considerable sensation. However, before they realized this idea, Jin Wan had gone to the UK. Since then, it seemed that Mo Jingshan had never really stepped into MN Group, which belonged to Jin Wan. She didn't expect that one day, COMO would really come. The receptionist on duty recognized him and learned from the news that he and Jin Wan were husband and wife, so she didn't dare to stop him, so there was no need to announce CEO Mo's arrival. When Xiaoba saw him, he had almost reached the door of the CEO's office. COMO? Xiaoba was holding a cup of water. It was hard to tell if his face was filled with excitement or confusion. What are you? Is she in the office? Mo Jingshan asked. Xiaoba quickly nodded. Yes, boss is in the office, but she should have finished her work at this time, but she hasn't gone home yet. It's probably because it's too late and she wants to rest in the office for the night. Mo Jingshan did not speak further and went straight to his office. Xiaoba didn't dare to knock on the door or inform Jin Wan. Anyway, Mo wouldn't eat her. Even if he did, it was reasonable and legal. She didn't dare to interfere, so she quietly went back to her assistant's office with a glass of water. Jin Wan was not in the office. As Xiaoba said, she was in the break room. She couldn't make it to the company for Monday's meeting, so the meeting was moved to tomorrow morning. Since it was too early, she decided to stay at the company. There was a balcony outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the break room. Jin Wan stood by the window. The window was not closed, and the door to the office was not closed. Mo Jingshan entered the office. The moment he reached the break room, he saw her back view. The little woman's arms were crossed over her chest, her long hair fluttering in the wind. The shawl she wore in the office was also fluttering in the wind. Mo Jingshan stood there for a while and didn't enter. He turned to her desk to pick up her phone, only to see that her phone was out of battery. After about 10 minutes, the man walked to the break room. Jin Wan didn't seem to hear him. She still stood there. Outside the window, High City was brightly lit, and the world was filled with endless prosperity. But as she stood there, it was as though she was standing in this endless prosperity. Her entire body was cold and cheerless. It wasn't until Mo Jingshan approached that Jin Wan heard him and turned around. She suddenly looked at him and blurted out, "How many times did my phone ring in the afternoon? Were you the one who called?" With that, she closed the window. After all, standing here for a while, the wind was indeed a little cold. She turned to walk out. She didn't plan to stay in the break room any longer, but the moment she brushed past the man, he reached out and held her wrist. Feeling the coldness of her hand, Mo Jingshan's brows furrowed. High City's weather is gradually getting colder. Why aren't you resting after work? Why are you standing by the window in the cold wind? Jin Wan's hand was indeed cold, but she was wearing autumn clothes and had a shawl on, so she wouldn't catch a cold. However, her hand was indeed very warm when held by him. She didn't turn back to look at him, only saying, "It's not cold. Being in the wind for a while will keep me awake." The man didn't allow her to return to the office. He pulled her back to his side and touched her face with his other hand. It was also cold, but thankfully, the coldness was only on the surface of her skin and wasn't a big problem. There was a clock on the wall in the break room. Jin Wan glanced at the time. "It's so late. Why did you come to my company?" He didn't look at the time but lowered his head to look at her. "Did you return to the Ji home in the morning? Ji Mengran was taken away by the police?" Mr. Xiao also went to the Ji home? As expected, nothing could be hidden from him. Regardless of whether it was his guess or everything was within his expectations, there didn't seem to be anything to hide. Jinwan lowered her head. I don't want to talk about anything related to the Xiao family. Ji Mingran's matter has finally come to an end. I've worked all day and am very tired. If you don't have anything else to do, I'm returning to Los Angeles tomorrow. Have a good meal with me tonight, and? The man's abrupt words caused Jinwan's expression to falter. For a moment, she forgot to pull her hand out of his. Seeing Jinwan's startled expression, Mo Jingshan lowered his head to look at their intertwined hands. He didn't let go and instead held her even tighter. Let's go to your company and find a random restaurant. You haven't eaten tonight. Let's go eat together? Jinwan finally returned to herself. She was about to pull her hand out of his but couldn't. Oh, then let's go eat. But can you let go of my hand? Mo Jingshan didn't release her hand. He watched her and chuckled lightly. It's rare for me to have a chance to pick Mrs. Mo up from work and have a meal together. How could I let go of your hand? Jinwan rolled her eyes at him. Don't you want to eat? I'll go get my bag. I'll help you. Jinwan glanced at the hand he was holding and pursed her lips. Chapter 664. For a man like Mo Jingshan, it took too much courage to stand by his side again. She had to give up too much. It wasn't that she couldn't do it, but Jinwan picked up her bag and went out with him. In the elevator, she lowered her eyes to look at the ground. Her eyelashes hid the shadow in her eyes. In fact, it also took courage to watch Mo Jingshan return to America. He still had an impression of the 10 years he left. To her, America was a huge shadow, but Shine's headquarters was still in Los Angeles. Mo Jingshan squeezed the hand she obediently placed in his palm. He looked at her in the mirror and said mildly, You can't bear for me to leave? You want me to stay in High City? Jinwan was startled and raised her eyes. No. It was impossible for Shine to move back to the country like MN Group. It was unrealistic for him to stay in High City forever. She had never thought about it. Mo Jingshan stared at her face. His thin lips curved slightly. After watching her for a moment, he said calmly, In the next 3 years, I've completely renovated and rebuilt the U Garden. If you want me to stay in High City, the condition is that you come back to the U Garden with me. Jinwan, she was surprised. U Garden has been renovated and rebuilt? He looked at her seemingly surprised expression and his handsome brows moved slightly. Didn't you dislike the U Garden's renovation a long time ago? Back when we got married, Grandfather personally installed it. Neither of us participated in it. The previous U Garden is a farewell to the past. Now, the U Garden is the home that I've poured all my heart into. It's just waiting for you, the mistress, to return. No. Mo Jingshan, aren't you going back to America? Although she couldn't figure out why he specially invited her for a meal before returning to America, Jinwan strangely felt that he wouldn't be returning anytime soon. But now, he was talking about the U Garden. In the past 3 years he had even rebuilt and renovated their marital home, saying that the U Garden was waiting for her return. Could it be that he planned to stay in High City in the future? The two went to a Western restaurant below her company. After entering the restaurant, the waiter arranged a quiet and elegant table for them. Mo Jingshan finally released her hand and let Jinwan sit down. Most of the dishes were ordered by Jinwan. Mo Jingshan only ordered a steak, and the other dishes that were gradually delivered to the table were all ordered by Jinwan. Most of the time, Mo Jingshan watched her eat. The portion sizes in this restaurant are very small. Do you think a small piece of steak like yours will fill you up? Jinwan picked up a piece of foie gras with a thin piece of bread while looking at the steak in front of Mo Jingshan that had barely been touched. I'm not very hungry. You're not very hungry, but you specifically came to me for dinner? Jinwan speechlessly picked up another piece of foie gras from the plate in front of her with bread, put some Western side dish leaves in it, and handed it to him. Eat this. Seeing that her words were hard, but her heart was soft. She clearly did not say a single word of reluctance, yet her expression seemed as though she was afraid he would be hungry, Mo Jingshan smiled and accepted it gratefully. He also gratefully ate the foie gras she had rolled. After that, he continued to watch her eat, and in the end, she couldn't control herself. Fortunately, she ordered a lot and put all the food on the plate in front of him, forcing him to eat more. In autumn, there were many rainy days in High City. When they left the company, the weather was clearly fine, but after eating, it rained. It was only a 5-minute walk from the company's main entrance. The two did not drive or bring an umbrella. Mo Jingshan sent her back to the company, but in just a few minutes, the two of them were drenched in the rain. Even though Mo Jingshan's temperament was not affected in the slightest by the rain, Jinwan still mercifully allowed him to take a shower in her break room. She also asked the nearby 24-hour shopping mall to send a change of men's clothes over. Mo Jingshan showered and dried his short hair. Although it no longer dripped water, it still fell slightly on his forehead, causing the originally cold and stern man to appear more seductive and abstinent. He changed into a set of black shirt and trousers that she had just asked the shopping mall to send over. It was the brand he usually wore. Perhaps the two of them did not need to put on a show to understand each other, but such a small detail and habit was enough to show that their relationship as husband and wife was actually quite peaceful. Aside from the various entanglements and misunderstandings that had occurred in the past, there was nothing wrong with it as long as they were not divorced. Seeing that the man had changed and come out, Jinwan, who had also just gone to the vice president's break room to take a shower, glanced at him. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through her mind. Jinwan. Mo Jingshan looked at her and instantly caught her stunned expression because he was wearing the clothes she had bought for him. He remained calm and collected, his voice low and heavy. Have you thought it through? Do you want to move back to the U Garden with me? Moving back to the U Garden meant that he wanted to let go of the past and resume their married life. She would still be his Mrs. Mo. Jinwan sat at the end of the bed in the break room and casually picked up a pillow to hold in her arms. She lowered her head to look at the pillow in her arms, cleared her throat, and said, "Let's talk about it when you come back from America. After all, you have so many things to deal with in America. I don't even know when you'll be able to return to High City. I don't have time to think so much right now." Mo Jingshan looked at her without a word. Jinwan coughed dryly. "You've showered and changed your clothes. It's time to go back, right? I'll stay at the company tonight. I won't keep you." Jinwan. "You know that my break room isn't as big as the one in your office. It's small enough for me to live alone. Don't even think about staying here." It was true that her break room wasn't big, but it wasn't so small that it couldn't even accommodate one Mo Jingshan. Mo Jingshan walked over and single-handedly took the pillow from her arms, throwing it back onto the bed behind her. He calmly said, "I'm returning to America tomorrow. Are you planning to draw a line with me after I shower and leave? You said you'll wait for me to return from America. If I really do come back, I'm afraid you'll have already fled to Java. I won't even be able to catch you. Don't think I don't know that you're as slippery as a loach right now." "Jinwan," he calmly asked, "are you going back to the U Garden?" Jinwan glanced at him. "I already said, we'll talk about it when you return from America." "Are you sure you won't run?" Jinwan felt guilty. "High City is only so big. Where can I run to? It's not like I can return to London." Chapter 665. The man stared at her face with his deep eyes, and there was a hint of a smile between his brows. When he lowered his head, he approached her dangerously. His voice was low and seductive. "If you're afraid that the U Garden won't be able to accommodate you, you can buy the buildings behind the U Garden. It's only 2,000 or 3,000 square meters. It's not like it can't accommodate you." Jinwan. She lay on the bed and scowled because this position was not beneficial to her. "Don't you think it's good for us to live our own lives like this? We don't interfere with each other and have our own lives. Besides, your Shine is busy enough, and my MN group is also busy. Even if we live together, there's no need for us to live together. Besides, I'm not in the mood to build a relationship right now. It's a waste of time." Mo Jingshan was so angry that he almost laughed. This woman really dared to say anything she wanted to say. "Jinwan, do you really think I can't do anything to you? Her long hair spread out behind her back, and her thick and slender eyelashes blinked several times. Her face gradually turned red because of the man's ambiguous position. I'm telling the truth. Also, this is my office break room. There are people working overtime in my company. Someone might come in at any time. No, don't? The man lowered his head and kissed her. Ji Nuan was about to raise her hands only to find that her hands had been single-handedly held above her head. Since that night in Jing City and this time when she was drugged by Ji Mengran, the two of them had been separated for 3 years. After all, they were no longer starting from zero. They seemed to have regained their memories and were like the most ordinary husband and wife in the past. But she was still extremely sensitive to Mo Jingshan's every kiss. And it was in her office break room. It seemed to be the first time he came to her workplace. 3 years ago, he only parked his car in front of the building when she got off work and never came in. But today, he came in for the first time, but he directly pressed her down on the bed in the break room. Mo Jingshan, you. Ji Nuan's face was burning hot. It was no different from when she was drugged. She had clearly pestered this man in AO Lan International the night before yesterday. Last night, she went to bed too early and didn't know how he slept. It had only been one night, but he had already come here. Just as Ji Nuan was feeling suspicious, the man's hand had already reached under the skirt of her business attire. Mo Jingshan, do we still need you to worry about our relationship? The man's voice was right by her lips, low and husky. Ji Nuan struggled to free one of her hands, but the man easily pressed it against her side. If you dare to do it to me in my office, Ji Nuan almost cried out, let me go. She was completely unaware of how soft her voice was at this moment, but it made the lower body of the man who was just using his hand to stir up trouble quickly tense up. He lowered his head and fiercely blocked her lips that were about to curse again. At this moment, both of them were extremely sober. They were not drunk, drugged, feverish, or having any irrational emotions. Ji Nuan was pressed down by him, and her tongue was wantonly invaded. She even suspected that this man had deliberately come to find her before returning to America and deliberately left an unforgettable mark on her before leaving. The man's fingers teased her until her whole body was limp and weak. No matter how she resisted, she could not suppress her body's reaction. After all, her body was too familiar with Mo Jingshan. Although 3 years had made her more cautious and sensitive, just these 2 times were enough for her body to recall many things in the past, and each time, Mo Jingshan spared no effort. Even though they had been entangled for who knew how long in AO Lan International the night before and yesterday morning, when the man sank into her, Ji Nuan could not help but let out a low gasp. She lowered her head and bit down on his shoulder. Mo Jingshan, you said you're going back to America tomorrow and that you want me to accompany you for dinner. Your purpose is to squeeze me once before you leave. Once? It should be more than once. He moved harshly. When Ji Nuan raised her head to moan, he chuckled softly, panting slightly. You didn't answer the phone in the afternoon, so I had to come to see for myself. I didn't expect all this to happen in your office, but I have to admit that it's not bad. Perhaps Ji Nuan was afraid that Xiao Ba, who was in the nearby assistant's office, would hear them, or that other employees who were working overtime might hear something when they passed by, so Ji Nuan did not dare to struggle too much. It was precisely because she was extremely obedient that the man's kisses moved from her brows to her eyelids, to the tip of her nose, her lips, her cheeks, her chin, and her fair neck. He even gradually began his own rhythm. Every deep kiss made Ji Nuan involuntarily bite her lips. In the end, the man had almost stripped her of her clothes, but the shirt and trousers she had just bought for him were still there. Ji Nuan's fingers gripped his clothes uncontrollably, and her voice was as soft as a cat's. You should hurry up. Mo Jingshan bit her ear. Are you sure you want me to hurry up on this kind of thing? Ji Nuan, what was wrong with this man today? Usually, he would take things slowly with her step by step. Why did it seem like he was cutting off all means of retreat today? She could not help but bury her head against his neck, her tone filled with uncontrollable grievance. Yesterday morning, my entire body was so sore that I couldn't get out of bed. Why didn't you ask me if I couldn't take it? Besides, the night before yesterday, I only clung on to you because I had no choice. What are you doing now? Aren't you clearly using tomorrow's return to America as an excuse? The man chuckled softly. Now that your wings are so firm, do you think I would dare to bully you? Then what are you doing now? We're husband and wife. What do you think I'm doing? Ji-Wan sobbed softly because of his sudden action of lowering his waist. Even if we didn't divorce, after 3 years of our relationship, it's no different from a marriage of convenience. It's just that we're husband and wife in the eyes of the law, but in reality, this is a marriage of convenience? The man's breathing became heavier and more chaotic as he lowered his body. However, he also became more languid. Isn't this the true meaning of being husband and wife? This time, it doesn't count. The man was probably very satisfied with her hoarse and low panting voice. He leaned down by her ear and bit her earlobe, speaking in a low and heavy voice. Ji-Wan, it doesn't matter if you admit it or not. You're destined to be my woman. You can't escape even if you want to. Ji-Wan's knuckles turned white from gripping his shirt. Her eyes gradually became misty from sweat. The man used his fingers to stroke her eyelashes and eyes, then reached out to help her lift her sweaty hair that was stuck to her cheeks. Ji-Wan took the opportunity to raise her head to bite his hand. However, she heard the man chuckle above her head. 3 years ago, you didn't have this habit. Recently, I realized that whenever you can't take it anymore, you like to bite others. You like to bite me so much? Chapter 666. Hearing this, Ji-Wan immediately let go of his fingers and slapped his hand away. The man chuckled as he pinched her cheeks, which were soft and pink from the surging tides of passion. His lips held back a smile. You even like to hit people when you're shy. When did you learn to be so violent? Just because Feng Ling went to England to accompany you for a year? Did she teach you all that? What has it got to do with Feng Ling? She only taught me some self-defense skills. Emo Jingshan kissed her delicate chin, smiling as he kissed. She was completely dominated by Nan Heng, yet she still had the ability to run to England to teach you self-defense skills. It seems like you didn't skimp on protecting her that year. Ji-Wan, speaking of which, the year Feng Ling went to England to accompany her, she really did slip away from Nan Heng's side. Later on, when Nan Heng went to kidnap her back, it was quite a scene, but Feng Ling did not appreciate it at all. Seeing that she could actually be distracted by other things at a time like this, the man lifted the blanket, scooped her in and continued. Ji-Wan widened her eyes under the blanket, watching him warily in the darkness. However, the man used his physical strength to pull her consciousness back from her wandering thoughts. She was completely unable to think about anything else. In consideration of Ji-Wan's overexertion last night, Emo Jingshan did not torment her for the entire night. However, in the end, Ji-Wan was still extremely sleepy. She closed her eyes and lay motionless on the pillow. The man held her, lying with her on the bed in her office break room. His nostrils were filled with the fragrance of her hair. Emo Jingshan slept like this tonight. The next morning, when he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the woman's porcelain-like, clean skin buried under her long hair. She was still in a deep sleep, and her breathing was even. She had woken up once during the night, but he had hugged her and coaxed her back to sleep. Right now, she was obediently leaning against his chest, sleeping especially peacefully. Emo Jingshan glanced at the time. It was already past 7 in the morning. Looking at the sleeping face of the woman in his arms, he had no time to think. He directly held her chin and kissed her. Ji-Wan was awakened by the kiss. She opened her eyes with a frown, only to see the man's handsome face in front of her. She closed her eyes again and tried to turn over to continue sleeping, but the man did not let her move and only left lingering kisses on her lips. Ji-Wan was kissed awake and raised her hand to push against his chest. Emo Jingshan. Aren't you going back to America today? She was still very sleepy. She asked in a hoarse voice, What time is it? 7:15. Hearing the time, Ji-Wan opened her eyes again. Today, the company had a Monday morning meeting, which would start at 8 o'clock. If she got up to shower and tidy up now, she most likely wouldn't even have time to eat breakfast. If she continued to sleep, it would be too late. But last night, even though Mo Jingshin had let her go in the first half of the night, she was still very tired and sleepy. She grumbled and hugged the blanket as she turned over on the bed. "I'll sleep for another 2 minutes. I'll wake up in 2 minutes." Mo Jingshin. He turned the woman who was still hugging the blanket over and kissed her again without hesitation. Ji-Wan had no choice but to open her eyes and look at him in confusion. "What are you doing? Get up. We'll go to the meeting after breakfast." Ji-Wan rolled her eyes at the ceiling. "Are you sure you're going back to America today? Why do I feel that you're even more free than me? It's not like I'll miss breakfast." The man said indifferently, "I'll go back to the company after watching you eat breakfast. My flight is in the afternoon." "Don't tell me you're so shameless that you want me to send you off?" She strangely felt that this man seemed to have the intention of packing her up and taking her to America. "No need." Hearing these 2 words, Ji-Wan finally got up from the bed lazily. She turned to see that Mo Jingshin had lifted the blanket and gotten out of bed. The man's shirt and trousers were a little wrinkled, but it did not affect his overall appearance. He would simply iron the shirt before he went out. It just so happened that there was a spare ironing machine in the break room. She had accidentally pressed the button by the bedside when she got up, and the curtain had been automatically opened. The sunlight that spilled in from the window fell on the man. He had a head of slightly messy black short hair, and his facial features were particularly clean and handsome in the morning light. Seeing that she really did not intend to stay in bed, the man turned and entered the bathroom. Ji-Wan looked at his tall back and raised her hand to rub her hair hard. Although she was still very sleepy, she finally accepted her fate and got up. After all, even if she did not eat breakfast, she could not sleep at this time. The sound of water in the bathroom rang. She glanced in that direction. Only then did she take the time to carefully think about what had happened after he came last night. He said that he was going back to America today. He said that he wanted her to accompany him to dinner. Then, when he sent her back, he was drenched in the rain and took a shower here. Then, things developed to an unmanageable stage. Then, she hugged him to sleep. After a night, it was as though they had lived the warm life of a married couple. He woke her up, told her to eat breakfast, and then she went to work while he prepared to fly back to America in the afternoon. If it were not for the matter of returning to America, everything seemed perfect. Was this man purposely reminding her of the good times they used to be together? He wanted her to remember all of this and obediently return to his side when he returned from America? Logically speaking, Ji-Wan should be angry at this man for every step he took. However, the moment she remembered that he was about to return to America, and she didn't know when he would be back, the anger she felt immediately dissipated. Mo Jingshin only used the bathroom for a few minutes. After all, they had both showered after last night. He simply washed up and came out. Seeing that he had come out, Ji-Wan could only get up to wash up as well. After tidying up, she pushed open the bathroom door and was about to leave when she remembered that this was the company and that there would be a meeting soon. She picked up her bag and put on some light makeup. After she was done, she turned to find that the tall and handsome man was leaning against the door frame. His deep, black eyes were focused on her for a long time. Her hand that was applying lipstick almost went crooked. She hurriedly wiped it twice before putting it down. She coughed dryly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" The man watched her, speaking softly. "Actually, waking up together like this every day, washing up, and standing by the side to watch you put on makeup is also a form of enjoyment." Ji-Wan, was this man saying sweet nothings to her? When they went to eat breakfast, Ji-Wan was dressed in the formal attire she had prepared for the meeting. However, she was afraid that the fragrance of breakfast would spread to her body, so she put on a light blue jacket. The man was usually exceptionally patient with her. Today, he was even more patient. Chapter 667. Mo Jingshin was clearly pleased by her obediently allowing him to lead her out of the office. However, after leaving the office, Ji-Wan's face immediately became thin. It was almost time for work. There were many people in the company. Even if they entered the CEO's exclusive elevator, there would still be many people in the lobby on the first floor. But at this time, even if she wanted him to let go of her hand, this man clearly had no intention of letting go. Thus, early in the morning, the CEO of Shine Group, Mo Jingshan, and the CEO of MN Group, Jin Wan, suddenly appeared at MN Group. The cold and noble man and the elegant and beautiful woman walking together were destined to be a very eye-catching scene in front of the company. Fortunately, Mo Jingshan had long announced their relationship in front of the media. Even if the group of employees in the company was curious about the gossip, they knew they were husband and wife. No matter how much gossip there was, they could not spread it. When they walked out of the company, Mo Jingshan's hand touched a few of her fingers. Although Jin Wan liked the silver ornaments she bought in G City last time, she only wore them occasionally. They were not suitable for daily wear. After all, these small ornaments that were similar to art could easily scratch her clothes. Mo Jingshan lowered his eyes to look at her hands. They were clean. Regardless of whether it was her wrists or fingers, she was not wearing anything. He calmly asked, "The blue diamond I gave you, did you leave it at home and treat it as trash? I've never even seen you wear it out." "Trash?" Jin Wan said, "I wore it once at a banquet, but the 10-carat blue diamond was too eye-catching, so I didn't usually wear it. I gave you that blue diamond so that you could hide it at home? Otherwise, you can either use it to embed on a ring and make it into a suitable wedding ring for you, or you can buy a new one." Jin Wan. When they were together, Mo Jingshan rarely bought gifts, but this man seemed to be keen on buying gifts for her now. Or he was keen on letting her wear his ring. The breakfast shop downstairs of the company was also very close. After a simple breakfast, Jin Wan hurried back to the company because the meeting was about to start at 8 o'clock. Mo Jingshan looked at the empty bowl opposite him and stood there, not in a hurry to leave. The waiter of the breakfast shop came to take away Jin Wan's bowl and chopsticks. At this moment, Mo Jingshan's cell phone on the table suddenly vibrated. He glanced at the caller ID and picked up the phone. "President, something happened?" His eyebrows didn't move as he calmly said, "I already know. The afternoon flight back to America. If there's anything, go find Nanhung first." After that, it was unknown what was said on the phone. Mo Jingshan was silent for a moment before asking, "Have you found the person?" "I found him. It's Akib's younger brother. He's been planning for 3 years to avenge his brother. The remaining members of the Cambodian gang were not in Los Angeles or China, so they couldn't be completely wiped out. The remaining members are all together now. In the past 3 years, they've made connections in America and bought people from various places. To be able to make connections in America, it can be seen that Akib's younger brother is more capable than his elder brother. Yes, now the underground people in America dare not provoke them directly. By the way, Simo, there's another thing. Speak. A few days ago, we found Shi Nianj in Washington, who has been missing for a year. Shall we inform Dr. Qin? Mo Jingshan said mildly, "The people he sent have already found them. There's no difference whether we inform them or not. This is their own problem. There's no need to interfere. I'll give him a call before I leave." "Okay, I understand." After hanging up the phone, Mo Jingshan threw the phone aside, looked at the untouched wonton in front of him, remembered Jin Wan's satisfied look when she ate the bowl of wonton, and picked up the chopsticks to eat carelessly. It had been 2 days since Mo Jingshan returned to America. Jin Wan's working state seemed the same these days, but only she knew how absent-minded she was. After 2 days, she couldn't help removing Mo Jingshan's WeChat from the blacklist. She was about to ask him how he was doing after returning to America, but when she clicked on his profile picture, she found that Mo Jingshan's WeChat profile picture had been changed. But the picture he changed was, it turned out that when he held her to sleep in her office break room that night, she leaned against his arms in a deep sleep, and he took a picture of her face. At the time, she was in such a deep sleep that she didn't notice that the man had actually taken a photo of her sleeping. In the photo, she was clearly sleeping, leaning against his chest, and the man's handsome chin was in the photo. Although it was only a part of his chin, any acquaintance would be able to tell that it was Mo Jingshan at a glance. She was really convinced that he changed the picture of her and the scenery outside the car window and replaced it with a picture of him sleeping with her in his arms. She really wanted to throw him back into the blacklist. Jin-won's temples throbbed. She resisted the urge to shove him back into the blacklist and send him a WeChat message. She originally wanted to say hello, but in the end it became, "You took a picture of me while I was sleeping. Why didn't I know you had this kind of hobby before? How dare you use it as your profile picture? If you don't change it, you'll stay in the blacklist forever." After sending the message, half an hour passed, but she still didn't receive a reply. Did Jin-won think that he might not receive the message after she pulled him out of the blacklist? Or was there something wrong? She thought for a while and waited for another half an hour, but there was still no reply. She could only send a black face emoji. An hour later, there was still no reply. Jin-won finally realized that maybe Mo Jingshin didn't have time after returning to America, or maybe he changed to another phone. Or, since she put him on the blacklist, he hadn't used WeChat again? Since she registered this thing for him, it was rare for her to take the initiative to send him a message, but as long as she sent it, he would definitely reply, and it wouldn't be long before he replied. Was he too busy? It had been so long. Jin-won couldn't take back the two messages even if she wanted to. She could only stare at Mo Jingshin's profile picture, looking at the way she leaned in his arms while sleeping. She couldn't be more disgusted with herself, but no matter how she stared at it, the profile picture was still there. She was very clear about what she looked like during the day. But she never knew that when she lay in the same bed with Mo Jingshin, or even fell asleep next to him, she would look like this. Warmth, sweetness, and even dependence that she seemed to have long been accustomed to in her sleep. Dependence without any grudges. Chapter 668. 2 days later, Jin-won sent the message. Mo Jingshin still did not give her any reply. He did not even give her a call. Jin-won went to a nearby province for a business trip and was about to return to the company when she suddenly received a call from Xiao Lui. An hour later, Jin-won stood outside the French restaurant near the company, looking at Xiao Zhenjuan who was sitting by the window of the restaurant and glancing at Xiao Lui who was standing by the car in the parking lot with one hand in his trouser pocket. She walked to the parking lot. Seeing her, Xiao Lui raised his eyebrows at her. "It's not that I don't want to let you go. It's just that my father hasn't been eating or sleeping well these days. He wants to see you but is afraid that you won't see him, so he asked me to find a way to ask you out. He wants to talk to you." "When did you know I was your sister?" Jin-won didn't say anything, but after all, Xiao Lui was good to her. She couldn't be hostile to him, so she asked him directly. Xiao Lui raised his eyebrows, put one hand in his trouser pocket and chuckled. "What do you think? Did you know I was your sister when you suddenly kidnapped me to the villa halfway up the mountain?" Xiao Lui looked at her for a moment and said, "It was just a guess. My father didn't know about your existence." Later, a relative of an old servant we hired, who used to work for the Ji family, accidentally mentioned these things. "My father became suspicious of your mother's marriage to the Ji family. After a series of investigations, he found out your birthday and suspected that you were not Ji Hongwen's biological daughter. However, even if you're really not from the Ji family, your relationship with me is at most that of a half-sister. I don't have any feelings for a sister like you who appeared out of thin air, but you happened to bump into my gun. When I was about to take Shirnianj away, you saved the little beauty that I yearned for. Tell me, when I know that you might be my sister, what should I do?" Xiao Lui said as he took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth, but because Jin-won was standing too close to him, he didn't light it. He just looked at her roguishly. "Although I'm really annoyed by you, I can't hurt you. At that time, I had no choice but to take you away and ask the servants in the mid-mountain villa to give us the few strands of hair you left on the bed. I took them to do a paternity test and confirmed that your surname should be Xiao. If Mo Jingshin hadn't appeared and taken you away after I investigated your background, I'm afraid I would have taken you back to the Xiao family at that time. Ashes to ashes, ashes to ashes. If I handed you over to my father, I would have a lot of peace. So, when we were in Beijing, you helped me because I'm your sister? What else?" With a cigarette in his mouth, Xiao Lui narrowed his eyes and said with a faint smile, "If you weren't my sister, why would I bother you? I've never been interested in women. If you weren't my sister, I wouldn't care if you were Jin Wan or Ji Lung. Even if you were swallowed by Rong Cheng, I wouldn't say a word." Jin Wan. "So, if I don't feel grateful to you, won't it be too much?" Xiao Lui snorted. "You don't have to be grateful. We'll be a family in the future. I'm your brother. Just do your duty as a sister." What's a sister's duty? For example, don't take Qin Siding's side when it comes to snatching women. I'm snatching sister-in-law for you. Can't you understand that? Jin Wan, then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Don't call me brother or sister. I don't intend to acknowledge your Xiao family at all, but for the sake that you once supported me, I'll do whatever I want with you. As for your father. Jin Wan paused and turned to look at Mr. Xiao in the dining room. Xiao Lui was not dissatisfied with Jin Wan's coldness. Xiao Lui wasn't dissatisfied with Jin Wan's coldness and just smiled indifferently. "I understand. He was unkind to my mother, but he loved your mother deeply for so many years. He asked for it. If I weren't a son of the Xiao family, I wouldn't have stayed in China, but now I have the responsibility of the Xiao family, so I can only do my duty as an elder brother. As for the rest, I respect your choice." The reason why Jin Wan agreed to come today was that when she was in the Ji family, she had summed up her mother's life in a few words, and she was unwilling to accept it. Some things should be talked about face to face. After all, now was the time to be frank. Jin Wan turned into the dining room. Xiao Zhenjuan still remembered that the last time he invited Jin Wan out for dinner alone, Jin Wan's attitude was not very kind. This time, when they met again after her parentage was revealed, Jin Wan was so calm that Xiao Zhenjuan couldn't understand her. "Mr. Xiao." Jin Wan sat down in front of him without greeting him, put her bag aside, and said flatly, "I'm willing to come to see you because I gave birth to you, but that's all there is to our relationship. I hope you can understand that I'm the daughter of the Ji family. My surname is Ji. In addition, please don't disturb my father in the future. Please remember your vow not to offend the Ji family." Seeing Jin Wan straighten out her role and attitude as soon as she sat down, Xiao Zhenjuan didn't speak for a while, and Jin Wan didn't need to say more. "I know you blame me, and I also know that your mother died because of severe depression, but just like Ji Hongwen said, if she didn't have this feeling for me, she wouldn't have struggled for so many years, and in the end, her body wouldn't have been ruined." Xiao Zhenjuan sighed softly. "Your mother was as beautiful and outstanding as you are when she was young. She went to the United States to study on her own with a student loan and a scholarship. Coincidentally, it was the same American business school that Ji Hongwen and I studied in. Your mother and I met each other and fell in love with each other. It was a very romantic process, and we went through a lot of hardships, which made your mother and I even more loyal to you. However, decades ago, my father and grandfather were in charge of the Xiao family. They used all kinds of means to force me back to China. In order to ensure your mother's safety and that she could finish her studies in the United States safely, I had no choice but to marry another woman arranged by my family. Chapter 669. Jin Wan smiled coldly. "What's the point of telling me this? You might as well tell my mother after you die." Xiao Zhenjuan nodded. "Of course I'll tell her, but I don't know if she will give me this chance and listen to me." He sighed. "Yi knows that there's something on my mind and has always been unwilling to completely take over Ling Xiao Group. If there's a day when I can completely let go and no longer have to be responsible for the family and the business, I will definitely go see your mother early." Jin Wan was still expressionless. She picked up a glass of water on the table coldly, took a sip, and then looked at Xiao Zhenjuan in front of her. "Mr. Xiao, I'm not interested in when you want to die or when you plan to hand over the family business to Xiao Lui. It has nothing to do with me." Xiao Zhenjuan sighed with a smile. "Before I met you this time, I had drawn up a contract to change the company's property rights. The Ling Xiao Group, including half of the Xiao family's property, will be transferred to your name. Yi has no objection to this. As long as you sign it, half of the Xiao family's property will be yours." Jin Wan immediately smiled and gently played with the glass of water in front of her. Do you think I lack money? Of course not. Not to mention that the G family and the MO family are your biggest backers. Even the MN group under your name is now a force to be reckoned with among Chinese enterprises, but what's yours is yours. I've owed you and your mother for so many years and didn't even know of your existence for more than 20 years. I'm just trying to make up for what I owe you. Although I know you won't appreciate it, the contract to change the property rights has been set. This is my kind intention. Jinwan still just smiled coldly. She couldn't accept his kind intention. I know you have deep feelings for the Ji family. I won't force you to break up with Ji Hongwen, but Nuan, I hope you won't only listen to one side of the story. If your mother hadn't been ill, she would never have married Ji Hongwen. She has always been very rational. How could she get pregnant and marry another man just because she lost control of her emotions? Xiao Zhenjuan looked at her face and said, she had encountered too many things since she was young. I believe that when you returned to G City, you already understood some of the situation. I also went to G City before and found out about the things that she didn't even know until her death. Later on, I specially investigated your mother's background, but her family had already left the country decades ago. In the vast sea of people, no matter how much money and power one had, it was impossible to find her real relatives. Moreover, she had already passed away, so there was no way to find someone to verify her blood relationship. Ji Hongwen and I kept saying that we loved her, but in fact, we didn't even do the most basic thing for her. Back then, when she broke down emotionally, Ji Hongwen took her away. He could have used any other method to help her, but in the end, he chose to marry her. If you were your mother, would you have married him in that situation? Jinwan's hand remained on the cup and did not move. She only raised her eyes to look at Xiao Zhenjuan. Back then, even I was deceived by Ji Hongwen. I thought that your mother was using this method to sever all ties with me. But recently, I found out that back then, your mother suffered from a very serious depression and even developed into intermittent hysteria. It was normal when she didn't have an attack, but when it did, she became unconscious. I think that back then, when she married Ji Hongwen, it was during the period when she had an attack. She mistook Ji Hongwen for me. She did hate me, but it was undeniable that she loved me. So if she had been sober, she would never have married into the Ji family. Jin Wan did have some impression of what Xiao Zhenjuan said, but the impression was not too deep. She only remembered that her mother was very gentle and never hit or scolded them. However, she would often hold her and sit by the Ji family's window in a daze, looking in a direction that she did not know. There were several times when she smashed things in the room, but Ji Hongwen refused to let her and Ji Mengran in. He only said that her mother was sick and not feeling well. Then, he took her abroad to recuperate and only returned 2 months later. In Jin Wan's memory, this happened at least twice. When depression developed to the stage of hysteria, it was a sign of neurasthenia and mental disorder. Ji Hongwen didn't want you to acknowledge me. Although you and your mother are indebted to him, he is also sanctimonious and doesn't want to admit his selfishness. If he hadn't taken your mother away and completely severed all ties with me, if he had been willing to give your mother a chance to explain herself to me, everything would not have developed to this point. Xiao Zhenjuan's expression was very serious. Back then we were both at fault. I can't absolve myself from the blame for your mother's depression. However, Ji Hongwen used his so-called tolerance and love to keep your mother by his side for the next few years. It was also unfair to her. Back then, when we were studying in America, Ji Hongwen pursued your mother bitterly but failed. In the end, he had no choice but to give up. But in the end, my marriage and the love and hatred that developed between me and your mother allowed him to take advantage of this loophole. Nuan, I'm telling you all this today, not to force you to do anything to Ji Hongwen, nor to force you to return to the Xiao family. But since you already know the truth, I should explain everything clearly to you. I can't let you be biased. As your real father, I don't want to be a rapist and victim to be despised by you. Back then, when Qing Lin gave birth to you and left me with a memory, I'm also very gratified. I want to transfer half of the Xiao family's assets to your name because I don't want to mistreat you, not because of my responsibility as a father. I don't want a single cent of the Xiao family's assets. You should take it back. After hearing this, Ji Nuan remained expressionless. Her eyes were calm. Xiao Zhenjuan looked at her. You still can't understand us, can you? At your age, perhaps you don't understand what fate is, but right now, I deeply understand it. The relationship between me, your mother, and Ji Hongwen is fate. There's nothing wrong with fate. What's wrong is my selfishness and my refusal to take that step forward. Back then, when I heard that your mother married into the Ji family, if I hadn't refused to see her because of my pride and temper, things wouldn't have turned out this way. Things like fate should be cherished when it's time to cherish it. If you don't take that step forward, when you truly regret it, it will be too late. Chapter 670. After leaving the restaurant, Ji Nuan drove away alone. Instead of going back to the company, she parked the car on the deserted side of the road and got out of the car when she passed the seaside on Binhai Road. Facing the boundless sea, he took off his shoes and walked back and forth on the soft sand barefoot. He looked at the footprints he had left all the way. He walked back and forth like this for a long time. When he looked back, he found that the footprints he had walked on before had been smoothed out by the waves, leaving no trace. She walked back and forth on the beach alone for a long time. When the evening was over and the sky was getting dark, she sat down on the beach and took out her cell phone to take a look. Mo Jingshan didn't reply. Although she had found the answer to the question of her own birth, everything was as she had expected. No matter what kind of hatred the older generation had, she did not have the right to hate on behalf of her mother. Her only right was to accept it or not. The reason why she went to see Mr. Xiao today was that she didn't hate him. She just didn't accept what the Xiao family gave her now. But there was an unspeakable feeling in her heart that she couldn't release, and she didn't know how to get rid of it. After driving here, she wanted to be alone for a while, only to find that the car that had been quietly following her a while ago was parked on the road near Binhai Road. Although it was quiet and the place where the car was parked was very hidden, Ji Nuan had already found it. Wherever she went, the car followed. When she stopped, the car also stopped, always following her at a distance. After observing for a few days, Ji Nuan was sure that the person in the car didn't mean to do anything to her. She guessed that this might be the bodyguard Mo Jingshan had arranged for her. He wouldn't affect her work and life, but he would be there when she needed him. Just like Mo Jingshan, he was the same now. He didn't interfere in her affairs, didn't break her wings that she had grown with difficulty, and didn't affect her work and life, but he would always be there when she needed him. But after returning to the United States, he hadn't contacted her for several days and didn't even reply to her messages. Ji Nuan was now sitting on the beach staring at her cell phone, lost in thought. She didn't know whether it was because of what Mr. Xiao said today or because of the man who hadn't replied to her. Didn't he say he would return to High City after returning to the United States? Didn't he ask her if she wanted to go back to the Yew Garden with him? In the end, after returning to the United States, he didn't even reply to my messages, not even a call. Before this man left, he came to her company and did this to her in her office. Before they went to bed, he said sweet nothings about eating, going to the Yew Garden, and going back to High City to coax her. In the end, he pulled up his pants, turned around, and ignored her. Ji Nuan resisted the urge to pull him back into the blacklist. She told herself that even if she pulled him back into the blacklist, she would not be able to appease her anger. Furthermore, such childish behavior was enough once. There was no need to do it again. However, her fingers still tapped on the phone screen a few times. In the end, she resisted the urge to turn off the phone screen and stood up. Barefooted, she picked up her shoes and walked back to Binhai Road from the beach. As usual, there were very few cars on this road. She sat there for nearly 2 hours and only heard 3 or 4 cars passing by. After cleaning up the fine sand under her feet and putting on her shoes again, Ji Nuan did not go back to her car. Instead, she turned to look at the black car parked not far away and walked over step by step in her high heels. Seeing that she was looking in this direction and coming over with a clear goal, the people in the car did not avoid her. She knocked on the car window from outside and slowly rolled down, revealing the faces of 2 strange men. "Miss Ji, what can I do for you?" The people in the car asked her politely and respectfully. Ji Nuan pursed her lips. Who sent you to follow me? Oh, sure enough, as she expected. He sent you to protect me at home? Yes, since Miss G returned to High City from London, we have been following you. COMO told us not to show up and not to affect your normal life, so we usually follow you very carefully. Jean Wan looked at them with her arms crossed and did not speak. The two men continued, but there are some places that we can't enter without Miss G's permission. For example, the charity banquet hosted by the city last time. Because it was hosted by the city's leaders, there were too many security guards. We didn't have an invitation, and we didn't come with you, so we weren't allowed to enter. Jean Wan pondered for a moment. Did he say anything else? CEO Mo just asked us to follow you from a distance to ensure your safety. He didn't say anything else. Did he tell you anything else before returning to the United States? The two bodyguards looked at each other. Jean Wan sensitively noticed that when they answered this question, they hesitated for 2 seconds longer than before and then answered, no. Jean Wan looked at them for a while, didn't ask any more, and turned to leave. After returning to her car, she threw her bag and cell phone into the passenger seat, looked at the street lights that turned on at 7 o'clock in the evening, and drove home. As the saying goes, the more you don't want to think about something, the more likely it will happen. On the 5th day after Mo Jingshan returned to the United States, an old client of the company, who had been working with him for more than 2 years, was going to Los Angeles to discuss a third-party project, which required MN Group's staff to go with him. This client was very picky. He didn't even meet the vice president of the company and the public relations staff of other departments. He would only discuss any contract and project with Jean Wan in person. So this time, he invited Jean Wan to go with him to Los Angeles. The night before her departure, when Jean Wan returned to Yuehu Bay to pack her luggage, she picked up her cell phone and looked at Mo Jingshan's profile picture. After looking at it for a long time, she finally put down her cell phone and began to carefully pack her suitcase, preparing to leave for Los Angeles. Before leaving, Jean Wan took out the blue diamond hidden deep in the drawer. Instead of throwing it at home as a piece of junk as Mo Jingshan had said, she contacted a very well-known and authoritative jewelry customization center in China, sent the blue diamond to them, and asked them to make a simple and chic blue diamond necklace. It would take about 2 weeks to make the necklace, and she could pick it up soon after returning from the United States. Chapter 671. Los Angeles, USA. Mr. Mo, this is your cell phone number in China. It will take you a few days to get a new one in the United States. A middle-aged woman with blonde hair and blue eyes walked into the lounge and placed a light blue card on the table. Her Chinese was not very fluent. Mo Jingshan had just returned to Los Angeles a few days ago. Less than 1 kilometer from the airport, he was ambushed by Akib's brother and his accomplices. During this period, the people of 11 Base had taken precautions in advance. Although there were no other problems or casualties, Mo Jingshan's cell phone was left in the car before the car he was in spontaneously ignited, so his cell phone and the phone card he brought back were both destroyed. Jean Wan had registered a WeChat account for him with his cell phone number in China. It was impossible to get a new cell phone number in the United States in a few days, and Mo Jingshan had just left 11 Base. When he got the phone card again, it was already the afternoon of the 6th day after he returned to the United States. Looking at the light blue card, Mo Jingshan picked it up casually. At the same time, a man in black came into the lounge. The moment the man saw him, he walked over respectfully and cautiously. He looked Chinese but spoke fluent English. Mr. Mo, our boss is currently being held hostage by those people. They ask you to meet them at the appointed place alone, or they will kill him at any time. Seeing Mo Jingshan still holding the card without saying anything, the middle-aged woman with blonde hair and blue eyes knew that he had something to talk about. She quickly stepped forward to open a spare cell phone on the table, inserted the phone card for him, and respectfully put it back in his hand. The man who had just come in was still talking, but Mo Jingshan couldn't tell what his attitude was from his eyes, so he didn't dare to speak for a while. Mo Jingshan casually turned on the cell phone he had just inserted the phone card into. Before he opened WeChat, another cell phone he often used in the United States rang. CEO Mo, Miss G is going to the United States with a partner to discuss a third-party project. The destination is Los Angeles. Shall we stay in High City or go to Los Angeles? Mo Jingshan's eyes darkened. He glanced at the other phone, asking mildly, has she already boarded the plane? Yes, she just boarded the plane. We've checked everything. This flight is very safe, and there are no problems. However, High City is within the country after all, and the safety factor is much higher than overseas. She's going to Los Angeles this time purely for a project cooperation, but once she steps into the United States, we're afraid that those people lurking in the dark will shift their target to her. Mo Jingshan didn't expect that Ji Nuan would suddenly have a project in Los Angeles. This time, the Cambodian remnants' revenge operation involved both Los Angeles and Cambodia, and they didn't dare to extend their hands so far in China. However, as soon as Ji Nuan stepped into Los Angeles, all the precautions he had arranged around her in High City would be useless. Send me her flight number and landing time. All right. A few minutes later, Mo Jingshan hung up the phone and logged into the WeChat account that Ji Nuan had helped him with on another phone. He immediately saw 2 messages she had sent him a few days ago. But the time shown was already a few days ago. Ji Nuan took a nap on the plane. When she woke up, it was still 2 hours before they landed in Los Angeles. She got up, went to the first-class bathroom to wash her face, and then returned to her seat to chat with her business partner. 2 hours passed quickly. After flying all night, they finally landed at about 8:10 in the morning. Her business partner's client had arranged for someone to pick them up, but when Ji Nuan walked out of the airport lobby while talking and laughing with her business partner, she saw a black SUV and Mo Jingshan standing beside it. At first glance, she saw the man dressed in a black t-shirt and trousers, and then she saw him standing by the car door with one hand in his trouser pocket. It seemed that he had been waiting for a while. It took her a long time to come back to her senses. She took a look at the time, then at the other cars parked outside the airport lobby, and then at the handsome man next to the black SUV. Your friend is here to pick you up? The business partner walking with Ji Nuan understood her look and asked with a smile. Ji Nuan came back to herself and nodded at the business partner. They came here to talk about cooperation with a third-party company, but they didn't have to travel together. Seeing Ji Nuan was picked up, the business partner greeted Mo Jingshan politely. For some reason, he felt that Mo Jingshan seemed familiar, but today Mo Jingshan was not wearing a suit, and this business partner was a foreigner, so he was not sure who he was. After greeting him and nodding, he got into his own car and left. Ji Nuan still stood there, looking in Mo Jingshan's direction. It was not until the man standing by the car smiled at her that she came back to herself and walked over with her small suitcase. It's rare for COMO to take time out of his busy schedule to pick me up. You don't even have time to make a phone call or reply to a message, but you still have time to come to the airport in person? Ji Nuan didn't ask too much. She just looked at the t-shirt he was wearing and felt that although he was very handsome, he was obviously not from the company. After all, he rarely dressed so casually in the company. You don't want to pick you up in person? Don't you want to take advantage of me? The man gave a faint smile. Ji Nuan chuckled. The question is, how did you know I would come to Los Angeles today? At the same time, without waiting for the man to answer, she immediately moved her eyebrows. Oh yes, I almost forgot. The bodyguards you arranged around me are also equivalent to spies. I have a little movement you can know. The man didn't refute and just took her small suitcase. Get in the car. Ji Nuan looked at him again, thought for a while, and explained, I'm here to see a client. The bodyguard should have told you that I'm just here to talk about a third-party contract. I'll be back in 2 or 3 days. The man lowered his eyes, put her suitcase into the car, opened the door, and said again in a low voice, Get in the car first. Ji Nuan hesitated, walked to the car door and insisted, So don't get me wrong. I'm not here to see you. Chapter 672. I haven't asked you anything yet. Why do you keep explaining? The man leaned down and gradually approached her with a deep smile in his eyes. Are you trying to hide something? Ji Nuan, she turned her head. Although I'm here for work, Seo Mo is so busy that he doesn't even reply to my messages, so I came here to see how busy you are. Mo Jingshan chuckled and gently stroked her head. A few days ago, I accidentally lost my cell phone in China, so I couldn't get a new number card. I couldn't log into other numbers, so I didn't see it. I didn't get it back until this morning. Jin Wan couldn't help looking at him. You actually lost something? Did someone steal your phone or did you accidentally drop it somewhere? The man didn't answer but said slowly in a low voice, when will you start working? I'll send someone to accompany you. It's not safe in Los Angeles these days, so I'll send 2 people from Nan Heng's place to accompany you. Jin Wan thought he meant it wasn't safe because she had seen it on the international news a few days ago. It was said that recently in Los Angeles, there had been some gangs and gangsters causing trouble. There were frequent confrontations between the police and those people. This matter had already been reported on the international news for several days. Usually, similar situations would also occur in other cities in America. She was already used to it. He wanted to arrange people from 11 Base to accompany her, so she didn't refuse. She just nodded and said, "Don't trouble them too much. I heard that Feng Ling hasn't been in Los Angeles for a long time. Otherwise, I would have met her." Speaking of this, Jin Wan remembered something and said, "Before I came, I booked a hotel in the downtown business district. Check out of the hotel." With that, the man closed the car door for her. Jin Wan took a look at the time. When the man walked around the car and got into the car, she turned to look at the man who sat in the driver's seat. The hotel is very close to the place where I'm negotiating with my partners. Then check out of the hotel and live at my place. Jin Wan couldn't explain her feelings, but she felt that the man's attitude was particularly firm today. For example, he suddenly came to pick her up, arranged for someone to accompany her, and asked her to stay at his place. Los Angeles was very big. If she didn't stay in a hotel, she would have to take a detour to discuss the project. However, since he said that he would arrange people around her, she couldn't make them go to the hotel to find her. After thinking about it, she didn't say anything more. This time, I came to the United States to find a third party to cooperate with. I heard that the other party is a very punctual person. It's best to arrive in advance at the agreed time. It'd be best if the person you plan to put with me has a car. If not, I'll book a car in advance and ask someone to drive over. I'll arrange everything for you. Don't worry, just follow me. Where are you going with me? Your company? The Mo family in Los Angeles? Or your apartment in Los Angeles? It's a hotel too. Jin Wan immediately turned to look at the man's handsome side profile as he drove. Toto? Why have you been staying in a hotel since you returned to the United States? The man didn't explain but said indifferently, I have some temporary arrangements. The hotel is not far from the city center, but it can guarantee that you will be sent there on time before you meet the partner. Don't worry, En. Logically speaking, Mo Jingshan returned to the United States because of the company. He had a place to live in the company, and he should have a place to live near the company. Besides, the Mo family in Los Angeles was not far from the headquarters of the Shine Group, but he was staying in a hotel. Jin Wan didn't ask much. After a moment of confusion, she turned to look out of the window, saying, since it's a hotel, please arrange another room for me. Mo Jingshan didn't answer. When they drove to the airport freeway, there was a traffic jam at the intersection ahead because of the car accident. The man slowed down the car and stopped behind a car. Then he put his arm around her waist, brought her into his arms, and let her sit on his lap. This was the airport freeway. Even if there was a traffic jam, they might have to drive forward at any time. Jin Wan struggled, but the man held her waist. The man pressed his thin lips against her white, soft cheek and said hoarsely, it's rare for you to come to Los Angeles for a few days. Stay in front of me. Don't think about hiding too far away, and don't think about living in other rooms. There is enough office space and sleeping space in my suite. You're unhappy because I didn't reply to your message, which shows that you still care about me. Since you're here, there's no need to keep a distance. I didn't say to keep a distance, but we don't have to live together. Jin Wan tried to avoid him. Anyway, I don't want to live in your room. Besides, you have a job in the United States, and so do I. No matter how big the suite is, We can still hear each other's voices. If I suddenly appear on the screen when you are working through a video call, it doesn't seem good. Why not? Do you think there are still people who don't know that you are Mrs. Mo? After all, Mo Jingshan was the head of Shine Group. Even if it was news about him in China, it was likely that some media in the United States would also forward and expose it. Therefore, when Mo Jingshan said in front of the media that they were not divorced, many people in the United States probably knew about it, especially the people in his company. Mo Jingshan, I find that you are really a clear-headed, shrewd, and ruthless person. I admit that I'm clear-headed, but what do you mean by ruthless? The more clear-headed and calm a person is, the more ruthless he is, isn't he? Mo Jingshan, when have I ever been ruthless to you? The only time I treated you coldly was 3 years ago, and all of it was for your own good. He pressed his forehead against hers, and his masculine breath lingered in her nose, filling her sense of smell. Think about it. What have I done to you, Anne? No matter what, you should tell me instead of doing it yourself. I'm not a child. I shouldn't be the last to know anything. Before coming to Los Angeles this time, Jin-Wan had thought that she should put many things on the table and have a good talk with him. Just because I often bear the responsibility for you without you knowing, I am accused of being ruthless? Jin-Wan reached out to push his arm. I didn't say it was a crime. I just suddenly thought of it, so I said it. We have to keep driving. Let go of me first. Sit on my lap. Don't twist around. It's easy for you to get into trouble like this. Jin-Wan, how could he be so indecent in a traffic jam on the highway? If she went to live with him now, she would basically be a sheep walking into a tiger's mouth. At this time, the engines of the cars blocked in front of them had been restarted. It seemed that they had dispersed and were ready to drive again. Chapter 673. Mo Jingshan raised her chin with his fingers. Seeing that she was obviously going to talk to him but was holding back her anger, he chuckled. Let's talk when we get back. Don't lose your temper. Then let go of me first. After all, they were on the highway, so he didn't force her face. He just kissed her on the cheek, let go of her, and let her sit back in the passenger seat. They returned to the hotel Mo Jingshan mentioned. As expected, he didn't book another room for her. After entering his room, she found that it was a business suite of more than 200 square meters, which was basically as big as a normal 3-bedroom apartment. There was a large study, 2 large separate bedrooms, and a living room, which was enough for 2 people to live in. Even when he was working, Jin-Wan wouldn't disturb him by making a phone call in the bedroom next door. After entering the room and sitting down, Jin-Wan said, "This hotel seems to be very close to 11 base. What's going on? Did something happen to Nanheng? Otherwise, why didn't you live in the company but here?" Mo Jingshan asked the hotel staff to bring in a glass of juice, put the juice on the coffee table for her, and said indifferently, "Recently, there is indeed something that needs Nanheng's attention, but it's just a small matter. After dealing with it, he will go back to the company. You don't have to worry about it. Just focus on your work. Don't walk alone at any time." Jin-Wan held the glass and looked at the pale green strange juice with fresh milk in it. With CEO Mo's ability, it must not be a small matter that hasn't been dealt with after so many days after returning to the United States. You let me live here. Are you afraid that I will be in danger? Besides, he had repeatedly told her not to walk alone and try not to leave his sight. And now it was so close to 11 base. If that was the case, some memories from 3 years ago suddenly leaped into her mind. For a moment, Jin-Wan suddenly rejoiced that she had come to America. At least she could see him safe and sound in front of her, instead of leaving him in Cambodia like in the past. She almost couldn't see him for the rest of her life. Thinking of this, Jin-Wan frowned. Well, Shine Group is yours after all. You are the one in charge. Who can restrict your whereabouts? If there was anything urgent that your subordinates needed you to deal with, they would most likely fly to High City, but this time, you suddenly returned to Los Angeles without warning. Could it be that you didn't come back because of the company in the US, but because of something else? Mo Jingshan looked at her for a moment and then smiled at her. You really dare to think of anything. I can see how sensitive you are to Los Angeles. Don't change the subject. He smiled. There are indeed some things that need to be dealt with, but it's not as serious as you think. As long as you settle the work here as soon as possible and return to High City safely in 2 or 3 days, you don't have to worry about anything else. Ji-Wan glared at him. What did I say after I got off the plane? Mo Jingshan, if there is anything, I hope you can tell me, instead of bearing it unilaterally. It's not a good feeling to be kept in the dark. If it happens again, I won't forgive you. Mo Jingshan unhurriedly put her small suitcase aside. You didn't eat or sleep well on the plane. What do you want to eat now? I'll ask the hotel to make it for you. I'm talking to you nicely. Why do you act as if nothing happened? Mo Jingshan, are you breaking the rules? If I don't treat you nicely, I won't be surnamed. Mo Jingshan glanced at her. What's the rule of the Cold War between us? Ji-Wan, she didn't want to have a Cold War. Before she came to the US, she had already ordered the blue diamond he gave her to have it custom-made. Although she was reluctant to admit it, she did want to solve the problem. After all, if they hadn't divorced, she couldn't always avoid it. Ji-Wan thought for a while and said, no matter why you came back to the US this time, even if you can't use your domestic number and WeChat, you should at least call me, but you didn't do anything, which means you didn't tell me something. But as soon as you heard the news that I came to the US, you went to pick me up, which means you care about my safety. Since I set foot on the land of Los Angeles, I have become one of your burdens again, but you don't want to affect my work, nor do you want to misunderstand my purpose of coming here, so you still don't say anything. So, Mo Jingshan, I said that you are always clear-headed and cold, and I didn't wrong you at all. The man interrupted her with a smile. I'll only make you more worried. After all, you were terrified of Cambodia. If I told you, I'm afraid you would have flown to the US a few days ago. The only thing I miscalculated is that you have a job in Los Angeles recently. Ji-Wan looked at him. Cambodia? Haven't those people been wiped out by 11 base and the local police, including the police in the US? Akib has a younger brother who used to wander around Africa and war-torn countries. Over the years, the power he built up in the dark was no worse than his brother's. Back then, those arms dealers had a lot of connections with Akib's family. This involved a lot of people, causing Akib's younger brother to use the excuse of avenging his brother to sneak into Los Angeles to take away what his brother couldn't get from me. Ji-Wan's eyes were calm, but her hands slowly clenched the cup. She didn't have a deep impression of what happened that year. After all, what happened in Cambodia at that time was a matter of life and death every minute and second. At that time, her only belief was to save Mo Jingshan, to give him food and water, and to keep him alive. She vaguely remembered hearing someone say that Akib and Dolly were trying to get some underground arms trading channels from Mo Jingshan's mouth. As long as Mo Jingshan gave in, they would gain billions of dollars of profits overnight. Underground businesses were often linked to all kinds of dirty or even illegal interests, but these interests were very huge. In this case, this so-called Akib's younger brother was after Mo Jingshan. So this is why you returned to the US this time? Mo Jingshan was calm. After knowing the truth, you began to worry? Chapter 674. Who liked to have a Cold War with him? Most of the time, it was nothing more than unwillingness and pride. Someone knocked on the door to ask for Mo Jingshan. Seeing that he had gone out, Ji-Wan packed her luggage in the room alone. Half an hour later, Mo Jingshan returned to the room, only to see that Ji-Wan's luggage had been placed in one of the bedrooms, and Ji-Wan had fallen asleep on the sofa because she had been on the plane for too long and had been waiting for him on the sofa for too long. Mo Jingshan bent down to pick up the phone she had dropped on the carpet. He picked her up and gently placed her on the bed. He pulled the covers over her and pushed the woman's hair away from the pillow. After watching her for a moment, he turned and walked out of the bedroom with long strides. In the living room of the hotel suite, Mo Jingshan opened the floor-to-ceiling window, walked to the European-style railing of the balcony, looked at the vast lawn, took out his vibrating cell phone, and picked it up deadpan. The other party's voice soon rang. "Xiao Mo, have you found it?" "Yes, I found it." The The so-called third party in Los Angeles who contacted MN Group is the head of a financial investment company bought by Akib's brother, Atuda. Their purpose is to lure Miss G to the United States without arousing her suspicion, because the third party they contacted has indeed maintained a long-term cooperative relationship with the head of that financial investment company and also has a cooperative relationship with MN Group, so it's reasonable to introduce a third party to them. They can't do anything in China, and they know that Miss G is your weakness. There's no other way to make her lower her guard except to lure her to Los Angeles through normal business negotiations. And they know that since you have returned to Los Angeles, Miss G will definitely come to Los Angeles because of this third-party cooperation. Mo Jingshan's eyes fell on the lawn in the distance, and there was coldness and sternness in his eyes. He put one hand on the railing of the balcony and said coldly, "Spread the news to her business partner that the financial investment company closed down a week ago, and all cooperation projects are in a shelved and buffer period. Anyone who participates in cooperation with them at this stage will definitely lose money. Tell him to give up the idea of discussing a third-party cooperation with Jinwan. Let him come forward and interrupt this negotiation. Don't give them a chance to get close to Jinwan." "All right," the man said coldly. "By the way, the financial company that has dealings with Atuda can really go bankrupt. It will never have the chance to establish itself in the financial investment industry again." "Understood. Then Miss G's special trip to the United States to cooperate with us has fallen through just like this." Mo Jingshan placed one hand on the railing and casually tapped on it with his slender fingers. The cold wind blew toward the lawn in the distance. "It doesn't matter if it's a financial investor or a business partner that has connections with MN Group. Find a company that will allow her to continue working with a third party. Don't let her make this trip in vain. After the discussion, send her back to High City immediately." The person on the other side of the phone said awkwardly, "Although it's easy to find a third-party company of the same level, I'm afraid we can't let Miss G return to High City after the discussion. After all, you're here. Whether she leaves or not, isn't it still up to you, Mo?" "Really?" Mo Jingshan was unperturbed. "Then I'll personally send her back to High City. Nanheng, and you can handle everything in Los Angeles." The person on the other side of the phone wanted to cry but had no tears. "We'll find a way to make Miss G's work go smoothly and let her return to High City without worry. She won't stay in the United States for too long." "Okay, go ahead." After hanging up the phone, Mo Jingshan took a look at the room where Jinwan was sleeping. Tuda was too purposeful. In order to get the clues from him, he really wanted Jinwan. Knowing that Jinwan was in China and they couldn't do anything to her, they tried to lure her to the United States under the pretext of company cooperation. It didn't matter if he told her in advance how dangerous the situation was. At least in this case, she knew how to protect herself better. Jinwan woke up after a while. After all, it was not dark yet. Just now, she suddenly fell asleep while waiting on the sofa. She got up to wash her face. When she came out, she found that the man was reading work emails on her computer. Mo Jingshan, MN Group and Shine Group are not the same company. Are you stealing business secrets by reading emails on my computer? Looking at the man's calm and composed back, Jinwan walked over. Mo Jingshan casually clicked open another of her emails. Without turning his head, he gently and indifferently said, "If I didn't read your work emails, I wouldn't have known that those messy, weak, small companies are all eyeing MN Group. Right now, you're really a piece of fat meat in their mouths." Jinwan. "After all, MN Group has just moved back to China, and we can't miss many cooperation projects. Although I receive a lot of emails and messages from other companies, I can't cooperate with just anyone. I'm just spreading my net widely. Although MN Group has a good reputation in the Chinese community, compared with Shine, it's still not as good as Shine. I can't be like Shine, which doesn't even take a look at companies that are not strong enough." He smiled. "Don't you want to sleep a little longer?" Jinwan walked over and saw that he had deleted the useless emails in her mailbox. In fact, several small companies in the United States had contacted her, but she had ignored them. She had planned to visit them in person after coming to the United States, but in the blink of an eye, they were deleted by Mo Jingshan. Jean Wan's cheeks immediately puffed up. She reached out to grab her computer. You can read them, but you actually deleted my emails. The man tilted his head to look at her. It's useless. There's no need to visit these small companies. You'd better stay here for the next few days and don't go anywhere. Don't contact these small companies. Jean Wan casually flipped through it and saw that he had deleted some emails, but they were indeed documents sent by small companies that even she didn't like and didn't need to see. She sat down by his side and casually clicked on the computer. Do you think you can erase the crime of stealing MN Group's business secrets by doing this? As the dignified CEO of Shine, you used my computer to read my company's emails. How on earth did you crack my computer password? He smiled. It's the same password as your phone. Do I need to crack it? Chapter 675. After a while, Jean Wan turned off the computer and said, Mo Jingshin. I'm still considering whether to meet the business partner I'm going to meet in the United States. I came here to talk to him, but after thinking about it carefully, I feel it's too much of a coincidence. I feel that the timing and reason of the financial company's olive branch to us are a bit far-fetched. But then Jean Wan said gloomily, but I'm already here. It's not appropriate for me to meet him. Mo Jingshin took a look at her and said with a smile, it's not too late for you to be vigilant. Jean Wan raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Is that company really related to Akib's brother? I was there when they were in Cambodia. If they investigate, they will definitely find me. They want to do something to me, don't they? At first, Jean Wan was wondering how Mo Jingshin was going to solve this problem, but she didn't think anything would happen. At most, he wouldn't be able to return to High City for the time being. However, when she slept just now, she dreamed of a lot of things that happened in Cambodia 3 years ago, and now she felt a little scared. She heard that Akib's brother lived in war-torn countries all year round. He was probably even more ruthless than his brother and would not give up until he achieved his goal. Then I don't have to meet the people of that company anymore. Jean Wan was silent for a moment and then said, in case something really happens. I've arranged another good company for you. The third-party cooperation that you want to expand with other partners in the same industry can be successfully negotiated. You can talk to the people and companies that I've arranged. As for the others, you don't have to touch them. Jean Wan raised her eyebrows. You arranged someone else for me? The man looked back, took the computer in her arms, and said lightly, I can't let you come here for nothing. What did he mean by coming here for nothing? This was because after she came out of the airport, she insisted that she only came to the United States to work, not to look for him. So even if there was a change in the work that was originally arranged, he could still let her continue to do it step by step. Was he personally laying a path for her to step down? Then I'll meet the partner you arranged. Based on Mo Jingshin's experience, the person he arranged would definitely be much more reliable than the person she was supposed to meet. Furthermore, the success rate of their discussion and cooperation would be much smoother. Okay, I'll give you their contact information later. Jean Wan had no objection and nodded. Mo Jingshin looked at the email on her computer again. Because of Jean Wan's trust and cooperation, as well as the fact that she obediently listened to his arrangements after learning of the danger, his lips curved into a smile. In the evening, they had dinner in the hotel. After Mo Jingshin talked with the people from 11 Base, Jean Wan followed him downstairs and the two had dinner together. The people from 11 Base still had an impression of Jean Wan, especially Kay and the others, who were very kind to her when they saw her and called her Mrs. Mo or sister-in-law. All this fate originated from the food Jean Wan cooked for them and the socks she washed for them in Cambodia. Speaking of which, she didn't know how Phong Ling and Nan Heng were now. After Nan Heng went to the UK to take Phong Ling away, Jean Wan had been busy with her career. She occasionally called Phong Ling, but Phong Ling didn't like to express her happiness or unhappiness to her good friends like Xia Tian, nor did she deliberately mention her relationship to ask her good friends for help. She never talked about herself. Phong Ling was quiet and feminine in front of Jean Wan, but most of the time, as Kay described, she was a very cold and very cool woman. She was good at fighting and fickle, but Nan Heng was deeply poisoned by her and couldn't get rid of her no matter how hard he tried. However, when they had dinner in the evening, when the people from 11 Base saw Jin Wan sitting at the same table as Mo Jingshan, they all looked surprised. It turned out that Mrs. Mo and Mr. Mo were a family. It seemed that the divorce they had heard was false. As soon as this conclusion came out, these people called her Mrs. Mo and sister-in-law more affectionately. In fact, Jin Wan didn't know how to explain. After being called like this so many times, she simply didn't bother to explain. Anyway, they wouldn't listen to her even if she explained. The next day, before noon, the business partner Mo Jingshan arranged for her was already waiting at the appointed place. Jin Wan contacted her business partner who came to Los Angeles with her, and after setting the time, she was going to go there. Mo Jingshan couldn't leave, so he had 4 good men from 11 Base drive to follow her. On the way, Jin Wan was still talking on the phone, when she suddenly saw the little brother who was driving look back through the rearview mirror and then speed up the car coldly. Jin Wan subconsciously looked back, only to find that several black cars had been following them for a while without her noticing. She put down the phone and asked, "Are they those people? Are they Akip's brother's men?" The driver didn't expect Jin Wan to know and immediately took a look at her through the rearview mirror. "Yes, that man's name is Atuda. He's very difficult to deal with. Mrs. Mo, sit tight. I'm probably going to start racing when we reach the road ahead." Jin Wan casually fastened the seat belt on the back seat. "Okay, sit tight." The driver immediately stepped harder on the accelerator. When he turned into the road ahead where there were fewer cars, he accelerated the car to more than 200 kilometers per hour. It was indeed the kind of racing speed that could only be seen in movies. The passing buildings and scenery outside the car window flashed by so quickly that she couldn't see them clearly at all. Jin Wan kept looking ahead at the speed displayed on the driver's seat and didn't look nervous at all. She knew there would be no problem with the people sent by Mo Jingshan. After about 10 minutes, the cars behind them also accelerated. Although they didn't get rid of them, they at least kept a safe distance from them. If they wanted to shoot here, they wouldn't hit this car. It wasn't until the car gradually slowed down that Jin Wan took a look back, only to find that several SUVs had just rushed out of the intersection on both sides and successfully stopped the unknown cars behind them. A lot of people got out of the SUVs, and Jin Wan could tell from their clothes that they were from 11 Base. The car continued to move forward. After a while, the driver saw that Jin Wan's face didn't change, looked at her through the rearview mirror, and smiled. "Mrs. Mo, aren't you afraid?" Chapter 676. The driver immediately smiled and looked a little silly. "That's true. Mrs. Mo, don't worry. I promise I'll make sure you finish your work today. It doesn't matter whether you can finish it or not. Just be careful. If you can't finish it, you can go back, so as not to get involved in other trouble." Jin Wan didn't expect that those people would chase the car on the road, and now she didn't want to trouble them too much because of her work. "It's okay. Mr. Mo has arranged everything. It will be very safe all the way. We have people at the appointed place," the driver said, quickly turned to another intersection, and went straight in the direction of the destination. After arriving, Jin Wan didn't expect that the partner Mo Jingshan arranged for her was an old acquaintance she had met in England. At that time, the other party was passing by London, England, and she didn't have a better project to cooperate with him, so unfortunately, they didn't cooperate. Unexpectedly, Jin Wan's MN group had moved back to China. This company had a lot of projects in the United States and High City. As soon as he saw Jin Wan, he talked about his regrets in London. However, after 2 or 3 hours, Jin Wan not only successfully negotiated the contract and several cooperation plans, but also directly turned the third-party cooperation into a direct cooperation between the two parties. The other party also introduced other friends to cooperate with the third party. In short, she gained a lot and also made up for the regret that she failed to sign the project in London. Finally, before leaving, they chatted happily. When she returned to the car to go back, Jin Wan looked through the plan she had just drawn up together and recalled the scene when she sat together and talked with the several partners just now. It went so well, and it could be said that she had fulfilled a little wish when she was in London. She really wondered if there was anything that Mo Jingshan couldn't predict or do. He just wanted to help her find a partner so that she wouldn't come to Los Angeles in vain, but it turned out that everything was just what she wanted. Jinwan was carefully reading the plan in her hand when the driver's cell phone rang. She raised her eyes and looked at the driver's seat. The other party put on the headset to answer the phone. She could only hear him calmly and solemnly respond, but she didn't know what he said, but then she noticed that the car had changed its direction. It took several strange roads and took a detour for about 20 minutes before it returned to the main road leading to the hotel near 11 Base. She guessed that she was probably being followed, but seeing that the driver was very calm, she continued to read the plan in her hand. After returning to the hotel, the bodyguard still followed her until they sent her back to her room and left 2 people to guard outside. Although no one clearly told her the seriousness of the situation, she could see the seriousness of the situation from the process of going out and coming back, as well as the situation of these people guarding and following her. She could see the seriousness of the situation. Jinwan didn't come out after returning to her room, but she didn't see Mo Jingshan after coming back in the afternoon. Even when it was dark, Mo Jingshan still didn't come back. She took a shower and walked back and forth in the room. She didn't use a hairdryer to dry her hair, but when her hair dried naturally, it was already 11 o'clock at night in Los Angeles time, and Mo Jingshan still didn't come back. This suite was very large. Jinwan looked at the time from time to time, then pushed open the floor-to-ceiling windows on the balcony and looked out. The lawn outside the hotel was also beautifully lit. The whole hotel was very luxurious and brightly lit. Because this place was in the suburbs, there were not many buildings in front of her, and all she could see were lawns or roads. But from this angle, she seemed to see the lights of Los Angeles in the distance. A familiar worry and anxiety troubled her. Just like when Mo Jingshan disappeared in Cambodia 3 years ago. She finally understood why Mo Jingshan asked her not to be guarded by the bodyguards he sent or to stay in front of him and not to leave his sight. Because in such a place, under such circumstances, she could only feel at ease when the person she cared about was in front of her. Jinwan stood on the balcony for a while, but she didn't see Mo Jingshan's car coming back, so she turned back to the floor-to-ceiling windows. She really couldn't sleep, so she picked up the cooperation plan during the day and went into the study of the suite, planning to finish this part of the work before tomorrow morning. It was 12 o'clock at night, and the lights in the study were still on. Jinwan had read the last few pages of the cooperation plan. When she turned back, she was about to get up and pour herself a glass of water when she suddenly saw a handsome and tall man standing in the shadow of the study door. Mo Jingshan put one hand in the trouser pocket of his trousers and leaned his tall body slightly against the wall by the door. His handsome face was hidden in the darkness of the study, but she could still see his incomparably cold outline. He was looking at her as if he had been standing there watching her since he came back. Jinwan paused and suddenly looked at the time. It was already past 12 o'clock at night. She had been waiting for him to come back, but she was so focused on her work that she didn't even notice when he entered the room. But she noticed that Mo Jingshan was wearing a suit today instead of the t-shirt he wore yesterday, so she subconsciously asked, "Did you go to the company today?" The man still stood there and looked at her with a faint smile. "Have you finished your work?" "It's just a cooperation plan. I can finish it after I return to High City. There's no hurry. I just couldn't sleep, so I opened it to have a look," Jinwan said as she walked out. When she came to Mo Jingshan's side, she wanted to brush past him, but she suddenly stopped and turned to look at the man who had been leaning against the wall indifferently and looking at her deeply. Why did you come back so late today? Did something happen?" The man's elegant and deep brows moved slightly. "Are you concerned about me?" Jinwan didn't hesitate and answered, "I can't really be an ingrate." Mo Jingshan looked at her, and the slight smile on his lips couldn't hide his elegance and indifference. "The company had some temporary arrangements today. I went back to the company to deal with some things and went to a dinner party in the evening, so I came back a little late. Couldn't you send me a message or call me in advance if you had a dinner party?" Chapter 677. Mo Jingshan saw that although the little woman did not say anything, it was clear from her eyes that she had been worried all night. Just as Jin Wan was about to walk past him, Mo Jingshan held her waist and pulled her into his arms. Being pressed by his arm, Jin Wan was suddenly pressed against the wall, and she was pressed against him tightly. She rushed to step back, but the man held her waist and refused to let go. At the same time, he chuckled lowly, "I thought you didn't care, so I didn't say anything, lest you rebuke me if I did." The man who had the ability to control the trajectory of her life was now trying to play the trick of suffering in front of her? Did he think she didn't care? She really didn't care. She didn't care at all. But no matter how she struggled, she couldn't break free. The man held her and seemed to be very satisfied with her embarrassed look. He bent down and kissed her cheek. As if it was not enough, he kissed her again. When Jin Wan was so angry that she wanted to bite him, the man smiled and kissed her hairline when she lowered her head. Jin Wan trembled all over and glared at him. "Mo Jingshan, you, admit it, Mrs. Mo, you still love me." Jin Wan put on a straight face. "Who wants to talk about love with you? Haven't you already arranged a plane ticket back to High City for me tomorrow? I'll go back tomorrow. I don't care if you live or die in the United States." The man chuckled. "Going back to High City as soon as possible will make me feel more at ease. Los Angeles is not suitable for you recently. If you want to come back later, I'll take you here in person and..." Who cared? Jin Wan twisted again but still couldn't move away. The man leaned against the wall and held her in his arms. He looked pleased and content, imprisoning her in his arms as if it didn't take him any effort at all. She struggled for a while, but in the end she had no choice but to lean into his arms. Looking at the man's face so close to hers and the gratified and satisfied smile in his eyes, her heart moved slightly. In the end, she gradually calmed down and allowed him to hold her. After a long while, she blurted out, "Do I have to go back to High City tomorrow?" The man's low, magnetic voice was right by her ear. "But you can't bear to go back? Knowing that you're not safe in Los Angeles, I'm afraid I won't be able to feel at ease if I leave alone." However, she hadn't been able to sleep well since he hadn't returned for a few hours. If she didn't receive any news from him after returning to High City, she might not be able to stay in High City anymore. She might find a way to fly over at any time. But she knew that she couldn't do anything here. She was involved in different fields from 11 Base and Nanhang, so even if she stayed, it seemed that she could only be protected by his people. Not only would she take up their manpower, but she might also be a burden to him. Returning to Sea City was indeed the most reassuring and least burdensome way for him. But after returning, what if he didn't reply when she sent him another message or didn't pick up the call? What should she do? He was afraid that he would be unable to control his imagination. "As long as you return to High City obediently, I promise that I'll be back safe and sound within half a month." The man patted her back. "Trust me." Of course, Jin Wan believed him, but she didn't expect these things before coming to Los Angeles. Now, according to the original plan, she would return to High City in 2 or 3 days, but now she suddenly didn't want to leave. But she had to go. She lowered her head, no longer retreating or struggling, but rested her head on the man's shoulder and said with her eyes closed, "Mo Jingshan, in fact, there's nothing wrong with sharing joys and sorrows. You don't have to always protect me behind you. I can do a lot of things for you, but the one thing I don't want is to become your weakness." But she knew that she was still his weakness. So no matter what, he had to take her back to a safe place and not allow her to step into danger. Mo Jingshan almost unconsciously raised his hand and placed it on her head. After holding her for a long time, he pressed his lips against her hair to ask softly, 3 years ago, when I woke up in the Los Angeles hospital, I read the dozens of messages you sent me." Jin Wan didn't speak but closed her eyes. "One of the messages said that you loved me." Mo Jingshan's voice was very low and light, and his tone was a bit profound. "So, take back your words that you don't love me anymore. You are mine, and your heart can only be mine. Don't run too far away. Come back when you have to, en?" Jin Wan still didn't speak. The assistant by your side, Xiaoba, said that in your first year in London, you would often run to open the door when you heard movements outside. You would then stare blankly at the empty space outside. Mo Jingshan asked softly, "Were you waiting for me?" Mo Jingshan had thought that Jinwan would hate him, blame him, and perhaps never forgive him. But since he learned what happened to her in the first year she arrived in London, he was completely relieved. No matter how heartless her words were, or how serious and cold she pretended to be, he didn't believe that she really didn't love him when she said she didn't love him anymore. Jinwan didn't speak, just being held by the man for a long time. She suddenly took a deep breath, buried her head in his arms, and whispered, "Mo Jingshan, after returning to High City, let's go back to the Yew Garden. I want to see what the Yew Garden looks like after you refurbished it." Alright. The next morning, Jinwan was sent to the airport on time, ready to return to High City. Mo Jingshan sent the little brother who drove yesterday to see her off, and 2 bodyguards followed her at the airport. After passing the security check and entering the departure hall, Jinwan learned that the little brother who drove the car would accompany her back to High City and would not leave until he was sure she was safely back in High City. The other 2 bodyguards didn't follow her in but waited outside the security check, waiting for her plane to take off. In the first-class waiting room, the little brother had been standing by her side obediently and had never left. All the people passing by or pedestrians she saw were ordinary people who were carrying suitcases and preparing to go out on the same flight, so the safety factor was very high. She didn't see Atuda's men even when she boarded the plane. Jinwan didn't have much luggage, but after all, there was a laptop in it, so it was a little heavy. When she boarded the plane, the little brother walked in front of her, ready to help her put her luggage in first, and Jinwan followed him. Behind her, the people who were also boarding the plane were lining up in order. After boarding the plane, Jinwan saw that the first-class bathroom was not closed. She happened to accidentally spill juice on her hand in the departure lounge, so she turned to go in and wash her hands before going back to sit down. As soon as she stepped into the bathroom in this cabin, the door behind her was suddenly closed. It was not spacious here, and Jinwan found that there was a person in this narrow space. She raised her eyes abruptly. Chapter 678. The black SUV sped on the road. At this time, Jinwan should have boarded the plane and would arrive in High City at night. He didn't have time to go to the airport in person for the first hour. He had just received news from Nanheng that the partner of Shine Group who had been kidnapped by Atuda for 2 days had been successfully rescued. Mo Jingshan hurried to the airport. Even though he knew that she had boarded the plane, Los Angeles was different from other places. Anything could happen here. He couldn't rest assured until he confirmed that she had boarded the plane with his own eyes and that the plane had taken off. As the black SUV sped on, his cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the number on the screen and suddenly felt uneasy. His usually restrained calmness was suddenly affected by unknown turbulence. He picked up the phone and listened to the urgent report from the man who had been sent to escort Jinwan back to High City. The black SUV continued to move forward. Mo Jingshan slowed down the car, held the steering wheel with one hand, and dialed Jinwan's number with the other. However, her cell phone was turned off. Her cell phone was fully charged before she boarded the plane. It couldn't be out of battery now. He called her again, but her cell phone was still turned off. Mo Jingshan's eyes darkened. He was sure that Jinwan had suddenly disappeared a few minutes after boarding the plane. If Atuda had also planted spies among the staff of Los Angeles Airport, he was afraid that all the staff on the plane had been controlled. Mo Jingshan dialed Jinwan's number again and again, but her cell phone was turned off every time, which made his heart sink. The car sped up and sped toward the airport at a terrible speed. Finally, he arrived at the airport. However, when he got off the car, his cell phone suddenly rang. The moment he picked up the phone, Nanheng's voice rang. "I don't know how Atuda got through to all the flights from Los Angeles to High City these days. They failed to find Jinwan's flight, but I'm afraid he has planted spies on all the flights these days, hiding in the cabins, ready to take Jinwan away at any time. They know that only Jinwan can threaten you, so they have no intention of letting her return to High City. I just got the news. Has Jinwan boarded the plane? Is it too late?" When Mo Jingshan answered the phone, he saw the 3 bodyguards coming out of the airport but didn't see Jinwan. His rare fluke was instantly shattered by reality. It was a rare sandstorm in Los Angeles. The strong winds and the yellow soil that came from nowhere seemed to have dyed the whole world yellow. The weather was foggy, and the air pressure was low until the sky gradually darkened. The people they sent out didn't receive any news from Jinwan. Mo Jingshan stood by the window. The people behind him were all quiet. No one dared to say a word. They were all anxiously waiting for news from the others. Looking at the sky full of yellow sand, Mo Jingshan's heart seemed to be empty. His mind was filled with the image of Jinwan leaning softly in his arms last night. After 3 years, she finally softened her whole body and whispered in his arms that she would return to the U Garden after he returned to High City. Her eyes were filled with faint anticipation. Mr. Mo, Atuda's men are very secretive today. They know how important Mrs. Mo is. Now that they have succeeded, I'm afraid they are deliberately wasting our time and energy. Kay, who had just returned from outside, walked in quickly. Mo Jingshan dropped the cell phone in his hand and raised his hand to touch between his eyebrows, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't rub the deeper frown between his eyebrows. Suddenly, the cell phone he had just thrown on the table rang. The sudden noise made Mo Jingshan freeze. He turned to look at the number displayed on the screen. It was Jinwan's cell phone number. Mo Jingshan's eyes darkened. He had guessed something. He picked up the cell phone and put it to his ear. Before the other party spoke, he said coldly, "Tell me your conditions. Don't hurt her." "Oh, Mr. Control, you're really smart. You haven't even heard my voice, but you've already guessed it." It was a similarly deep, cold, and slightly hoarse voice. There was a hint of the vicissitudes and profoundness that came from being stimulated by the smoke of gunpowder in the war-torn lands. Hearing that it was Atuda's voice, Mo Jingshan's face suddenly became much colder. For many days, it was his men who came out to do things. It was rare for him to do it in person, but he directly put his hands on Jinwan. However, Atuda had always been ruthless, and those who were targeted by him wouldn't be treated well. "Atuda, this is Los Angeles, not your territory in Cambodia. I warn you not to act rashly. If my people lose even a hair, I'll let you know the price." Mo Jingshan held the phone deadpan and looked coldly at the yellow sand outside. "Of course I know this is Los Angeles. If it wasn't Los Angeles, do you think I would threaten you by kidnapping your woman?" The man on the other side of the phone sneered. As he spoke, he turned his eyes to Jinwan, who was slowly waking up in a corner of the dark warehouse, and said coldly, "Oh, your woman has woken up. She's not bad. She's so beautiful that I'm surprised. I didn't expect that you had such a beautiful wife but didn't find her for 3 years. She appeared in Cambodia and even shot a keeb in the back, didn't she?" Mo Jingshan's face almost froze. "What did you do to her?" "It's nothing. It's just that before we took her away, we covered her mouth and nose with a drug in the toilet of the cabin, causing her to be unconscious until now. But she's awake now. She's opening her eyes. She's looking at me. Her eyes are filled with fear and confusion. Her expression is very surprised. She seems to be very afraid," the man on the other side of the phone said in a cold and gloomy voice. "Mr. Control, this woman is very important to you, isn't she?" The veins on Mo Jingshan's forehead bulged, and he suddenly looked back at the people behind him. Kay immediately asked someone to pick up the prepared computer and find the location of Jinwan's cell phone signal with the help of the current call signal. However, after more than 10 seconds, the computer screen showed that he couldn't find her. Chapter 679. "Alas, your woman is glaring at me. She seems to have heard what I'm talking to you about. She seems to understand her current situation. She is glaring at me? Interesting. Mr. Control, your woman seems to be brave. She has been awake for a minute, but she just looks at me coldly and doesn't make any noise or scream. Tut, I didn't expect her to be so calm. She is so beautiful. I wonder if she tastes good. If you dare to touch her, you'll have to pay with your life. Your brother Akib won't be the only one who will be killed." Mo Jingshan's expression remained calm, but his eyes grew colder. "There's no need to waste words. Tell me your conditions." Ha, you should know the conditions. Give me the confidential channels I want to know and the contact information of the underground partners, including the other things I want to know. Why don't you give up the rights you and 11 Base have in the underground? What do you think? Shine Group is such a big company. Why should it have connections with the underground chaebol and the global arms dealers? All the channels of making money are in your hands. Since you don't intend to stain your hands with blood, just give them to me as soon as possible. Mo Jingshan didn't speak. Although he didn't find Jin Wan's location, K had quietly activated another searcher by his hand. At the same time, a faint red dot appeared in the signal detected by the instrument. K instantly captured the position of the red dot and turned to cooperate with the others to search for Jin Wan's location. Everything was a silent contest. Atuda knew that Mo Jingshan wouldn't agree easily. After all, this was related to the source of income of tens of thousands of people in the underground world, including the interests and life of Nan Heng, the other boss of 11 Base. If Mo Jingshan could give it to him so easily, so many things wouldn't have happened in Cambodia 3 years ago. And in this situation, if Mo Jingshan agreed too easily, there must be something fishy going on. Atuda didn't know whether Mo Jingshan would agree or not, so he said with a cold smile on the other side of the phone, I can only keep your woman alive for 12 hours. If you can't give me what I want before noon tomorrow, I'll cut off one of your woman's hands and send it to you in a parcel with the flesh. I'm warning you one last time, don't touch her. Mo Jingshan said coldly, Atuda, the fight between us has nothing to do with women. There's no need to involve women. You've exhausted all your means, but in the end, you only focus on women. Are you admitting that you're only good at kidnapping and threatening? What's the difference between this and your brother who died a long time ago? It's really a waste for your group of brothers to give you the title of God of Hell. In the end, you're just a trash who kidnaps women. To deal with you, Control, I can use normal means to deal with you. Since I can't do it openly, I'll do it in the dark. You've never had any weakness, but this woman is your biggest weakness. It's rare that you would answer my call in person. It seems that this woman is really special to you. I really want to know what it would feel like if I cut off her flesh piece by piece or press her under my body to taste her. TSK, it's exciting to think about it. Just as Mo Jingshan was about to crush the cell phone with a straight face, Atuda on the other end of the line suddenly gave a strange smile and looked at the figure who was curled up in a dark corner of the warehouse, warily looking at him. He slowly stood up, put the cell phone to his ear, and walked up to her step by step. She only remembered that when she boarded the plane and went to the bathroom to wash her hands, she suddenly found a short, thin, but very agile man hiding in the bathroom. She only remembered that the man suddenly closed the bathroom door and pressed her down. When she instinctively wanted to cry for help, he covered her mouth and nose with a wet thing. She struggled for a while and then passed out. She had been here ever since she woke up. At first, she was at a loss. Then, she heard the voice of the man who really looked like a Keeb on the phone. She heard him sometimes speaking in Chinese and sometimes speaking in English. She roughly understood her current situation. She was kidnapped after getting on the plane. Akib's brother, the man named Atuda, used her to threaten Mo Jingshan. Seeing Atuda walking up to her step by step, the coldness and wariness in her eyes couldn't hide her nervousness. She curled up in the corner and looked around carefully, but it was dark around her. There was no light in the warehouse except for a strong flashlight on a metal shelf in front of her, which was shining on her. Mr. Control, your woman isn't as calm as she looks. She's actually scared. She's looking at me cautiously and warily, but at such a close distance, your woman is really beautiful. She's even more attractive than when I looked at her from a distance. Atuda's voice was filled with viciousness and threat as he walked towards her. Jin Wan leaned back against the corner, but Atuda suddenly stretched out a hand and grabbed her hair. Jin Wan almost cried out in pain, but when she remembered that he was talking to Mo Jingshan on the phone, she swallowed back her cry, clenched her teeth, and closed her eyes silently. Atuda didn't expect that the woman who had a gleam of fear in her eyes was so tough. He narrowed his eyes coldly, grabbed her hair harder, and warned, "Tell Control what I'm doing to you. Tell him that if he doesn't agree to my conditions, I'll make you wish you were dead." As he spoke, he placed the phone directly next to her ear and deliberately pressed it against her ear. Mo Jingshan heard the voice on the other side of the phone, only to find that it was very quiet on the other side except for the sound of rapid breathing. No one spoke. He frowned and asked tentatively, "Jin Wan?" Chapter 680. She went back to High City as he wished because she didn't want to be a burden to him, but she didn't expect that these people were lurking in the cabin. She couldn't let him be threatened by her. Otherwise, she didn't know what kind of danger he would face. 3 years ago, she had sneaked into the Cambodian bandits' lair and escaped alive. She had never been afraid of such a life-or-death situation. Now, she would rather die than let these people succeed. Jinwon didn't speak or make any sound. She just kept her mouth shut and turned her head to avoid the cell phone that was pressed against her ear. Atuda's eyes turned cold. "You're really stubborn. What? Don't you want your husband to save you?" Jinwon didn't answer but opened her eyes and looked expressionlessly at the man whose eyes were full of murderous intent. Her eyes were clearly saying to him, "Don't even think about it." "Jinwon, say something." Mo Jingshan's voice rang in her ear. Mo Jingshan's voice rang in her ears. She fought back the torment in her heart and the fear in this environment. No matter what, she didn't want to be a burden to him. She just looked coldly at the man who almost tore her scalp off at this moment. Her face grew paler and paler because of the pain, but she still gritted her teeth and didn't make a sound. Atuda suddenly let go of her hair and slapped her hard in the face. The slap was so loud that Mo Jingshan on the other side of the phone looked stern and cold. "Jinwon." Jinwon was knocked to the side with such force that she hit the wall next to her. Her face was burning with pain, and her head hit the wall hard. She only let out a low hiss from the pain, but it was just a small gasp and she didn't make any more sound. "Originally, I wanted to play with you, but your grandfather hates stubborn women like you who don't know how to cooperate." Atuda stepped forward, grabbed her hair again, and dragged her more than 2 meters away. When Jinwon swallowed her scream in pain, he threw her hard to the ground. "Don't you want to talk? I have many ways to let him see how miserable you are now. Do you want him to see how you are ravaged and beaten by me in the cell phone video?" Atuda said as he gave Jinwon, who was almost paralyzed on the ground, a hard kick on her stomach. Jinwon fell to the ground in pain, curled up instinctively, and covered her stomach with her hands. She bit her lips so hard that they bled, but she still refused to make a sound. Although Mo Jingshan couldn't hear Jinwon's voice on the other side of the phone, Atuda's voice was too loud. Mo Jingshan looked coldly at the searching device on the other computer next to him, clenched his cell phone, and clenched his fingers so hard that his slender knuckles turned white. "You still won't talk?" Atuda looked at the woman who had fallen to the ground, dragged her up again, slapped her hard on her swollen face, and kicked her to the ground. Jinwon was kicked back and hit hard against a corner of the metal frame. She didn't know how sharp the edge of the metal frame was, but she knew something had pierced her shoulder. She trembled in pain and her back was stained with blood. "Ah, you're bleeding." Atuda snorted and looked at the woman lying on the ground with her eyes closed. There were tears on her face, blood on the corner of her mouth, and blood on her shoulder. Her face was as pale as a corpse, but she still wouldn't make a sound. He narrowed his eyes coldly and suddenly gave a look to his 2 subordinates who were walking in from outside the door. The 2 men nodded, turned to find 2 basins of water with ice and poured it on Jinwon. Jinwon slowly opened her eyes, but there was still darkness in front of her and pain all over her body. At this moment, she was in so much pain that she didn't even have the strength to cry out. Seeing that she had woken up, Atuda walked up to her step by step and slowly squatted beside her. He looked down at her as if looking at an ant that would be trampled to death by him at any time. "If you don't speak, my brothers will let you know what it means to live a life worse than death. I wonder how the women Mo Jingshan has slept with taste. Their skin is so white and tender, but it's so red and swollen after a few hits." With that, Atuda touched her face twice. Jinwon suddenly turned her face away and tried to avoid his hand. At this time, Atuda handed her the cell phone and winked at her, asking her to speak. As a vigilant man as Mr. Control, if he couldn't hear this woman's voice, he wouldn't act rashly even if he believed this woman was his wife. He had to make this woman speak. He had to make sure that she was his woman. He had to make Mr. Control, who had always been calm, panic. Otherwise, their plan would only be stalled, and it would be no good for them to stay in Los Angeles. Unlike Cambodia, it was too dangerous to act here. Jinwon took a look at the cell phone he handed over. She still didn't speak, but her eyes seemed to be hesitating. She slowly raised her sore and stiff hand and was about to take the cell phone. Atuda stared at her coldly. He didn't give her the cell phone but still kept the gesture of handing it to her. Just as Jinwon raised her hand and touched the phone, she suddenly swatted her hand away from his hand with great force. The moment the phone fell to the ground, the screen instantly shattered, but the phone didn't hang up as she wished. Atuda suddenly cursed and kicked Jinwon hard again. Jinwon didn't know what to do next. This time, Jinwon couldn't help groaning. Although her voice was low, the cell phone fell beside her, and the sound came into Mo Jingshan's ears through the loudspeaker. Mo Jingshan's eyes were bloodshot. The cell phone had been put on speaker mode, and everyone behind him could hear it. Mr. Mo. Feeling nervous and angry, Kay looked at the signal on the computer screen and suddenly spoke in a low voice. Mo Jingshan turned his eyes to the direction of the signal, hung up the phone, picked up the electronic car key and walked out. Chapter 681. Atuda picked up the phone only to find it had been hung up. He didn't know whether it was Mo Jingshan who hung up or the phone was broken. He looked back and gave his two men an impatient look. The two men rushed up to lift Jinwon from the ground and carried her to the only metal shelf in the dark warehouse. As soon as she was placed on it, the cold touch of the metal frame caused Jinwon to shiver all over. Lying on the higher ground, she saw through the strong light of the flashlight that there was a table by the side with several items placed on it. It was a needle filled with some unknown medicine, a knife and a gun. It was a tall black medicine bottle, and a rope. There were several other things that she couldn't even imagine under normal circumstances. Was this the place where the top 10 tortures were performed? Or what? Jinwon looked stiffly at those things. When Atuda came over and saw the fear in her eyes, he said coldly, "Afternoon tomorrow, if Mo Jingshan is 5 minutes late, I'll let you taste one of these wonderful things." With that, Atuda picked up the needle and played with it wantonly in his hand. "Do you know what this is?" Jinwon stared at the needle in his hand. When she saw the few drops of liquid squeezed out of the needle, she felt a chill run down her spine. She slowly curled up on the cold metal frame, fearing that he would inject the contents of the needle into her body. Atuda slowly reached out to her with the needle in his hand and put the sharp tip of the needle close to her arm. Seeing the deep panic in her eyes, he sneered. "This syringe contains one of the most difficult drugs to quit in the world in the past 20 years. Many people have lost their families because of it, and many people have committed suicide because they couldn't quit." Hearing this, Jinwon widened her eyes in disbelief. Atuda glanced at her coldly. "As the price for angering me, guess how I should punish you now?" Jinwon took 2 deep breaths and tried desperately to pull her hand out of his hand, but Atuda sneered at her struggle, continued to hold her wrist and was about to insert the needle into her skin. "No," Jinwon struggled hard. "You'd better behave yourself. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that I won't take your life right now." Atuda held her down and pierced the needle into her arm. Jinwon gave a low cry of pain. Before Atuda could push the needle into her body, there was a strange beeping alarm outside the warehouse. Atuda was shocked and turned to look at his 2 men in the warehouse. What's going on? How could they find the signal so quickly? How could they blow up our signal shielding device? Even the latest jamming device from the UK can't stop those tech dogs in 11 base. The 2 men panicked when they heard the warning beep. They turned to look at Atuda, who was furious. "Brother, since the signal location has been found, I'm afraid they'll be here soon." Shine Group is one of the giants in the global technology field, and there are many capable people in 11 base who study military technology. Their teleportation speed is beyond imagination. What should we do? Do up with us? Or do we hold this woman in our hands as a threat? Atuda suddenly pulled out the needle and looked coldly at Jinwan, who was still wet because she was not injected with the needle, and said fiercely, "Take her away." With that, Atuda quickly turned and walked out. Jinwan didn't understand what had happened. She only knew that the thing in the needle hadn't been injected into her body. What did he mean by blowing up the signal device? This was something she had never experienced before. At this moment, the two men came forward and directly lifted her up, carrying her on their backs and walking out. "Where are you taking me?" Jinwan hung weakly on their shoulders, her body aching all over. Her voice was very soft, and all she could see was blood. She felt she had fallen into hell and didn't know when it would end. But the only thing in her mind was, she couldn't let Mo Jingshan show up. She couldn't let him come, she couldn't let him be threatened because of her. She couldn't let him take the risk. For a long time, Jinwan couldn't understand why Mo Jingshan forced her to leave in order to change the course of her life. She couldn't understand why he had to hurt her and force her to leave. She couldn't understand how he could bear all the pain alone as if he didn't feel anything. What she hated most was that he didn't consider her feelings. But now in such an environment, Jinwan suddenly realized, it turned out that a person's greatest love was to bear all the pain that the other party couldn't bear. He would rather bear everything alone than let the other party suffer with him. At this moment, she finally understood Mo Jingshan's forbearance. He just wanted her to live. Because of love, he had to bear the burden for her. Because of love, he had to let her leave and live a good life and grow up well. Because of love, he had to help her deal with all the things she couldn't do without her knowing. In order to let her live freely, he endured in a place she didn't know without saying a word. He didn't even see her or call her. Just like she was now. She would rather he didn't know anything. She would rather he didn't hear her voice. She would rather he didn't take the risk because of her. At least, he had to live a good life. Don't be threatened. Jinwan didn't know why these three people were panicking, but after she was carried out, her head was suddenly covered with a layer of black cloth. A car seemed to be driving up, and the two people carrying her opened the door and threw her in. Jinwan fell in the car and didn't have the strength to sit up. Her body was screaming in pain. The wound on the back of her shoulder seemed to have stopped bleeding, but her head was in a mess and her ears were ringing because of the previous impact. She could only feel that those people were anxiously driving away, but she couldn't understand what they were saying. Because now they were speaking to each other in the Khmer language of Cambodia, instead of the awkward Chinese or English that she could understand. Chapter 682. We can't throw her down. We have to take her with us. Control has always been unpredictable. This time, we finally have a weakness in our hands. If this woman wasn't our biggest bargaining chip, I wouldn't have tried so hard to kidnap her. If she isn't in our hands, how can I get what I want from him? Atuda sat in the passenger seat and looked cold. As he spoke, Atuda looked back at Jinwan, who couldn't sit up because of the pain all over her body. She lay on the back seat, struggling to breathe. She struggled to get up but couldn't and even twitched because of the pain from being stabbed in the back by the metal frame. He sneered and looked at the evening sky outside. Let's leave first. Control will find a way to find us if he can't find us. We must transfer this woman to a place where he can't find her for the time being before he and the people of 11 Base carry out a full-scale interception. Jinwan slowly turned her eyes to Atuda in the passenger seat. Although she didn't understand what they were talking about, she could guess that they wanted to take her to a place where Mo Jingshan couldn't find her. She put her hands weakly under the leather seat and slowly clenched her fists. The car had been speeding for a long time, and the sky had gradually darkened. Suddenly, the surroundings lit up with a blinding light from the headlights. The light was so bright that it affected the driver's vision, making it impossible for the driver to continue driving forward. "Brother, we're surrounded." Atuda raised his hand to shield his eyes and then looked out of the window at the black SUVs that were quickly encircling them. Then he looked coldly at Jinwan, who was still lying motionless on the back seat. No wonder she's Control's woman. She was just taken away a few hours ago. It's not the 24 hours I promised, but he came so soon. Atuda's eyes were very fierce. Your life is in our hands. Since he wants to surround us, let his woman die first. At the same time, Atuda suddenly ordered, use the rear of the car to collide with them. Even if the woman in the back is killed by the impact, use her life to open a bloody path to escape. He said this in Chinese. Jinwan heard it clearly. She slowly raised her eyes and looked at the crazy man who was almost perverted. In an instant, the surrounding cars had approached, and the man in the driver's seat suddenly hit the headlights of the black SUVs with the rear of the car. In an instant, the car was hit by all kinds of violent bumps and bumps. Jinwan was thrown off the back seat because of the sudden violent collision. She fell under the seat, only to feel that the collision behind her was getting faster and faster, and the force was getting stronger and stronger. Obviously, the car was going to be destroyed. Because of the impact, her whole body was stuck to the car door. She wanted to raise her hand to stabilize her body, but she couldn't grab anything. She suddenly fell from one side of the car door to the other. Her head hit the inner lock of the door. The metal handle of the door was very hard, and the pain made her dizzy. It seemed that a string in her mind was about to snap. However, before she could sit still, the car collided violently again. Jinwan couldn't control her body. The people sitting in the front looked at the cars outside cautiously and fiercely. They looked around at the impenetrable encirclement and couldn't believe that they had been blocked by Mo Jingshan's men so quickly. Outside the car, the leading black off-road vehicle galloped over in the encirclement. Kay looked at the car in front, which had been seriously deformed due to the violent collision, and immediately turned to look at Mo Jingshan, who was sitting in the driver's seat with a solemn look. Mr. Mo, they deliberately hit us with the rear part of the car. Will they? Mo Jingshan didn't speak but just looked in that direction. Calmly, he suddenly sped up the car and rushed in that direction when Kay didn't expect it at all. Brother! In the car in front, the two subordinates could no longer control the direction of the car. Just as they were about to escape toward the highway ahead, the black off-road vehicle suddenly rushed over at a speed of more than 220 kilometers per hour and sped past them. At the same time, the car quickly turned around and decisively stopped in the middle of the road to block their path. The car suddenly screeched to a halt. Jinwan's entire body was in so much pain that she almost lost consciousness. She didn't know where her body was stuck in the back of the car, but she couldn't move. Waves of dizziness surged in her head, and she felt worse than carsick. Atuda looked at the car ahead in the silent night until the door of the car opened and Mo Jingshan in black appeared in their sight. At the same time, Kay got out of the car on the other side and walked up behind Mo Jingshan. Kay and the people who got out of the cars behind took out their guns at the same time and fired several shots at Atuda's car, which couldn't move because of the deformation. The car shook, fell down, and all the tires were burst. Jinwan couldn't see the man walking towards them step by step in the dark, but she instinctively felt that the two men in the car seemed to be in a panic. Atuda suddenly reached behind, pulled Jinwan out of the corner under the seat, and dragged her to the front of the car. When Jinwan was unable to struggle and pressed her head against the front window, he pointed a gun at her forehead. The car was surrounded by headlights from all directions, but Jinwan's pale face was almost pressed against the front window. The lights and moonlight reflected in the car made her look frighteningly pale. Her whole body was numb from the pain. She closed her eyes and did not look out, afraid that Mo Jingshan would see the fear in her eyes. She closed her eyes and suddenly smiled. Stinking bitch! Why are you smiling? Atuda only knew that Jinwan was very important to Mo Jingshan, but he forgot that she was the most important person to him, so he wouldn't allow her to be in danger for too long. Let alone 24 hours, he wouldn't even allow her to be in danger for 2 hours. How could he come here so quickly? Atuda angrily grabbed Jinwan's clothes on her shoulder and slowly pulled the trigger at her gun. Even if he had to confront Mo Jingshan, as long as he had her as his bargaining chip, he didn't believe Mo Jingshan would dare to kill him. Chapter 683. Atuda flew into a rage and was about to shoot, when Jinwan suddenly grabbed his wrist and bit hard at him with all her strength. Atuda was in so much pain that he couldn't control the direction of the gun, but the sound of a shot rang in the car and the bullet hit the bulletproof glass window. The muffled sound of the gunshot in the car was particularly clear. Mo Jingshan, who had approached, suddenly looked at the dark window of the car with a cold look in his eyes. Jinwan also looked up at the murderous look in Atuda's eyes. Mo Jingshan was outside the car. Since he had come here and Kay and the others had come to save her, she couldn't sit still and wait for death. Atuda suddenly threw Jinwan away and aimed the gun at her head again. Jinwan stared into his eyes and slowly raised her hand. Her blood-stained hand looked cold in the dark car. Noticing her movement, Atuda pulled the trigger again. Jinwan suddenly raised her hand and grabbed his hand holding the gun, staring at him coldly. When he was about to shoot her, she suddenly said in Khmer language, "Don't worry, I'll shoot you. Don't worry, I won't kill you. You're not going to kill me. I'll kill you." Atuda froze and the murderous look in his eyes intensified. He narrowed his eyes and focused all his attention on her. 3 years ago, when Jinwan was by the Cambodian old lady's side, she accidentally overheard her saying this. She had learned this phrase from her. Now it came in handy. Just when Atuda's attention was attracted by Jinwan's words, the car suddenly collided violently. Atuda, who had been sitting steadily, suddenly leaned back. The gun missed Jinwan's head and Jinwan raised her hand to grab the gun. Atuda raised the gun with one hand, grabbed her hair with the other, cursed her hard, and slammed her head against the car door. Jinwan's forehead was cut and she was in a trance. Outside the car, Mo Jingshan found the best opportunity to escape. The car behind rushed forward at the same time. At the moment when the car was about to run away, the people in the car saw 2 figures nimbly jump onto the car. Kay followed Mo Jingshan closely and suddenly pulled the door open. Jinwan, who was forced to lean against the car door, almost exposed her upper body because of the force of the door opening. The moment he saw Jinwan covered in blood, Mo Jingshan paused and saw that Jinwan was about to fall from the speeding car. 3 years ago, the scene of her falling from the car on the Los Angeles freeway and losing her unborn child appeared in his mind. Mo Jingshan furrowed his brows, reached out his arm, and leaped down. The meaning of the Khmer phrase Jinwan had just uttered was, "Those who threaten the weak are the truly weak." Atuda was used to being in the limelight and would never admit defeat. He was irritated by her taunt, so he lost his mind and focused all his attention on Jinwan. Because he didn't expect she could speak their language. This was what the old Cambodian woman said when she rescued her, protected her in front of a keeb, took her back to the tent, and bandaged her wounds. Jinwan understood what the old Cambodian woman meant. The old Cambodian woman didn't like them bullying a weak woman, but she didn't dare to say it to her face, so she whispered it to her in the tent. Jinwan learned this sentence at that time. Later, when she was in London, she accidentally saw a dictionary of this country in the library. She casually flipped through it, compared the meaning of that sentence, and finally understood the meaning of this sentence she learned. But now, because he was distracted, Atuda suddenly looked up at Mo Jingshan and Kay, who had rushed to the roof of the car and angrily asked his 2 men in the car to speed up and throw them off. Jinwan almost fell from the open car door. She looked up at Mo Jingshan, who had reached out to her, and the tears that she had been holding back fell from the corner of her eyes. She opened her mouth, but because the car was too fast and the wind was too loud, she couldn't hear what she was saying, but Mo Jingshan had already seen her lips move. "You? Be careful." Mo Jingshan frowned, and Kay stretched out an arm behind him to help him bend down to save Jinwan, shouting, "Mr. Mo, there's a turn ahead, and it's easy to be thrown off. We must go down immediately. Don't go down. Otherwise, the car will exceed the speed limit. We can't keep our balance." With that, Kay took Mo Jingshan's arm with one hand and clung to the edge of the driver's window with the other, trying to harass the driver inside to slow down the car. "Don't slow down. Rush over," Atuda said as he raised his gun and aimed at Mo Jingshan, who had leaned out of the open car door. Mo Jingshan's eyes were fixed on Jinwan's tearful eyes. An unimaginably deep pain and heartache attacked all his senses. Jinwan's eyes were almost saying goodbye to him. She didn't expect to be rescued alive, nor did she want him to pay any price for saving her. Her eyes were full of calmness. Her calmness caused countless waves to surge in his heart. He suddenly grabbed her ice-cold hand and pulled her out of the car with all his might. This difficult move put Mo Jingshin in the most dangerous position. Seeing that Atuda was about to shoot, Kei hurriedly got down to the driver's seat when Mo Jingshin yanked Jinwan out of the car and quickly aimed the gun at the driver's forehead. The car suddenly began to shake unsteadily because of the loss of control of the steering wheel and couldn't move forward steadily. Atuda's hand was swayed. Before he could open the bulletproof car window to shoot Mo Jingshin had rolled to the ground with Jinwan. Jinwan was already so numb that she could not feel any pain. However, her entire body was held in Mo Jingshin's arms. The shock from the landing caused her heart to tremble, but the first to land was Mo Jingshin's body. He used his body to protect her, and because of the inertia from falling from the car, he held her tightly and rolled several times on the road. When they finally stopped, Mo Jingshin put one hand on her side and got up as if a lost treasure had finally come back to him. He put his hand behind her head and hugged her tightly. Chapter 684. The car in the distance had begun to change lanes, and Kei was still confronting those people in the car. When the other SUVs saw that Mo Jingshin had taken Jinwan away from the car safely, they were ready to attack the car at any time. Leaning against Mo Jingshin's arms, Jinwan slowly opened her eyes but didn't have the strength to move. It felt really safe to rest her head on his chest. She had thought she would die, but now she was rescued safe and sound. Making sure she was out of danger, she closed her eyes and let out a long breath. Mo Jingshin looked down at the wounds on her head and all over her body, the red and swollen marks on her face caused by Atuda, and then the blood on her back and the blood on the corner of her mouth. Her hair was disheveled and she was almost unrecognizable. Mo Jingshin stroked her face. He couldn't imagine what she had experienced in just a few hours. The great fear and pain in the past few hours almost made her lose consciousness. She just stared at him with her eyes wide open, staring at this man who had rescued her from the abyss at a moment of life and death. She finally believed what kind of skills and courage this man, who was sometimes cold and sometimes gentle, had. Just like the Mo Jingshin she met in Cambodia 3 years ago, his judgment, 11 base behind him, and his men and brothers who were as skilled as Kei. When he put on a suit, he was the eye-catching CO, but when he took off his suit, he was a cold and decisive man. This was the Mo Jingshin she was familiar with and the man she loved. He was willing to endure everything for her, and so was she. Jinwan understood his love at the moment of life and death, but at this moment, in the vast world, she just stared at him blankly and felt dizzy. She was motionless and couldn't even say a complete sentence. Jinwan, speak. Mo Jingshin had guessed that she would be hurt by Atuda, but he didn't expect she would be hurt to this extent. He had found her as fast as he could, but Atuda was a lunatic with no humanity at all. Seeing the blood on the corner of her mouth and on her head, Mo Jingshin suppressed his surging killing intent. Seeing that she didn't speak, he suddenly picked her up by the waist. Mo Jingshin. Jinwan slowly opened her mouth when she was about to be picked up by him, but her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Mo Jingshin paused and looked down at her, thinking that he had hurt her. A car will come soon and take you to the hospital. Tell me where it hurts. He kept his voice very low as if he was afraid to scare her who was so fragile and injured, or more likely to scare himself who was hiding in his heart and was about to go crazy. Even in Cambodia, Jinwan hadn't been hurt like this. At that time, she was kicked by Dolly, burned on her hands, and a gun was pointed at her head. He hated her so much that he wanted to kill Dolly at the last moment. Right now, Mo Jingshin was relying on his rationality to keep calm, but Jinwan gently shook her head in his arms, buried her face in his shirt, and breathed in the smell of his arms. It was clean, refreshing, cold, and had the unique warmth of him. I'm sorry that you were threatened by them and put you in danger. I wasn't careful enough. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come to Los Angeles. Mo Jingshin's calm black eyes were suddenly filled with heartache. It has nothing to do with you. If they didn't find you by my side, they would have made trouble for others. My parents are still in Los Angeles. Even if you stay in High City, they can't turn their target to you, but they will use other means. To people like them, anything related to me is just a means for them to defeat me. Seeing the apology in Jinwan's eyes, Emo Jingshan held her head in his hands, bent down to kiss her hair, and said in a low voice, "You came to Los Angeles to talk about business. You are the head of MN Group, and it's not realistic to keep you in High City. You didn't implicate me. It's my fault for putting you in danger, not yours. Wanwan, tell me where it hurts. Don't hold it in and don't blame yourself. Do you hear me?" Jinwan smiled weakly. Back then, I should have learned how to shoot properly from Feng Ling. In the end, I didn't even take self-defense seriously. If I was more skilled, I could at least help you and not drag you down. Emo Jingshan furrowed his brows and held her tightly in his arms. He kissed her hair, the blood on her forehead, and finally her ears. He gently said, "I don't need it. You just need to be yourself. I love you for who you are right now. You don't need to change. You don't need to learn anything. You don't need to change. You don't need to touch these things. A peaceful life is the most precious. I'd rather you live in peace forever than touch anything related to guns and kidnappings. Good girl, don't let your imagination run wild." Jinwan's face hurt. Perhaps because the wind on the road was too cold and piercing, she couldn't see how frighteningly pale her blood-covered face was. She just pressed her head against his chest and said hoarsely, "If I die in their hands today, will I still return to the place where we met, or will I only have this one chance to return to your side? Will I never be able to find you again?" "What nonsense are you talking about?" Emo Jingshan's heart missed a beat. Seeing Jinwan trembling in pain and cold in his arms, he took off his coat and put it over her. At this moment, several cars came from behind, which seemed to be the same model as the cars driven by the people of 11 Base. Emo Jingshan was about to carry Jinwan to get up, when suddenly he paused, looked at the two black off-road vehicles that suddenly stopped a few meters away, and glanced at the license plates of those cars. They were indeed 11 Base's cars, and the license plates belonged to the group of off-road vehicles that 11 Base remembered, but there were almost invisible bloodstains on the black wheels. Just as Emo Jingshan was about to carry Jinwan up, the driver's door of the two cars was suddenly opened, and two of Atuda's men jumped out and pointed their guns at Emo Jingshan. Kay and the other cars were surrounding Atuda's car in the distance, but they didn't expect that the people who came to support them had been intercepted by Atuda's men, and they drove 11 Base's cars to confuse them. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.